Everyone has something to share, in either wisdom, story, or logic, and it's clearly amazing to hear all the differing missing links discovered by people unique to their own journeys, and in how they have come to discover them. Together, we can help to build a bigger picture for a better future, for a brighter tomorrow. Let's stand united. Let's remove the veils, and let's create a new world together. Are you that missing link? Join Jesse Hale on the Missing Link Talk Show as he helps to unveil the mystery through the unique wisdom and story of others.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome everybody here back to the Missing Link. Today we're excited to have back for the third time Kim Lakefort, who's a former drug lord. He's figured out how to, reclaim his own power by being a mastermind, teaching people about their six senses, how to become a true non-inverted person, what they're trying to teach you here in this day and age. So how are you doing today, Kim?
I'm fantastic, Jess, and how are you?
Good. We had a marathon yesterday, but managed to push through it. And back here today, we just finished an interview, a 2-hour interview. So we got another one here with you today. So why don't you briefly tell us a little bit about your journey? I know you've said it to us, the first few times, but just in case people are hearing you here for the first time, just share a little bit about your story before we get into Sixth Sense and, other things that, you'd like to teach the people here today.
Well, I was born in Denmark in 1960. We moved to Australia in 1970. And I was rejected by my dad, rejected by school. I left school at 12. I kind of sat in the bush for about 5 months when I wagged school. I used to spend about 6 hours a day in the bush. And I think that 6 months in the bush every day for about 6-7 hours, it's an interesting learning curve, especially at that age, just sitting there, admiring wildlife and understanding how the circle of life revolves. But I was always there sitting there wagging school because I hated school. I used to get my hair punched in every day. Moving to Australia with the first name Kim, couldn't speak English with red hair and freckles. It was a perfect trifecta. So I copped it pretty hard. So I suffered anxiety. I was rejected by my dad, and I ended up taking drugs to numb the pain, because you're in stress, you're in fear. And that took me down a different path with friends that was rejected the same way, or foster care homes, that sort of thing. But you grow up differently. And I watched a few of my mates die on heroin. A couple have died in my arms. And, it's a different learning curve. And then from there, I took a different path. And I started buying and selling cars. Buying and selling cars, I started buying and selling the most collectible item in Australia, and became one of the most famous over the next decade. So I started to get hooked up with people from all walks of life because this car set a status for people. And we all had a passion in it. So we were involved in drag racing, show cars, GT clubs, swap meets, everything like this. And you get to meet people from all walks of life because this car was the most preferred or wanted car in the oldest collector's items in Australia. And that sort of led me down to a path to eventually end up being a drug lord. And I've gone into a lot of details about this. And from this moment onwards, well, it's pretty hard to explain, but 2 top scientists from NASA moved into Brisbane, Australia with 5 international networks. Now, a lot of people think this is criminal, but in 1980, when this happened, these 2 scientists moved into Ormeau, Brisbane, Australia, and set up 5 international networks. They moved into Australia, but they were scientists and professors, and what they were doing was not against the law. Methamphetamine came out in the 40s by Hitler. There's a 2-hour special released by CIA Disclosure not long ago, which I have that video on my timelines on the Street Western Bible or the witness page. And you can see in this video for 2 hours that this became embedded into society. And they make no secrets about it. Methamphetamine was used by Hitler in the war. That's how he mowed down the countries very fast, and they couldn't work it out. And both England and America started to use meth in their armies in order to compete with them. And, that's come out in disclosure. They were all on meth. And it goes into the details that Hitler himself started making the pet pill, which it became on sale over normal pharmaceutical accounts without any prescription, and same with shopping centres. Literally, the truth is, and it's really hard to fathom, but the whole Western civilization, 80% end up being on these pep pills. And they didn't see it as a drug. They saw it as a happy pill. Because meth brings you back to your primal state, and without it, you can't cope in life. Today, 93% of people all over the world takes amphetamine or meth or ADHD medications, the same thing. And it's the biggest selling product all over the world today. In 2016, Tony Abbott did a urine test in Australia and all the government's authorities and the Defence Force. It came back 57% positive to meth, and 75% of people admit using it. He made a disclosure on international news all over Australia and every mainstream media that the same statistics all over USA, Europe, and also in Asia. More than 70% of people all over the world uses this. And that's because people can't cope. And this is where the biggest sign is of us suffering the human conditioning. The human conditioning means that we suffer from mental disorders, gene defects, and we can see our body starts going corruption, corrosion, collision in every single research done, whether it be cancer, gene defects, heart attacks, blood clots, myocarditis, and MS disorders, ADHD. So in 1960, this was only at 2%. Today, it's at 54%. That was declared in 2019. And then it said that, the science was showing of accelerating 7 times faster. That was confirmed by Jeremy Griffiths, the top bowler in the whole world, only 2 months ago. His statement was that 93% of the Western civilization is beyond the point of return. And, what you got to consider here, when you consider climate, we're talking about the New World Order, we're talking about the Great Reset, we're talking about the WF, and we're talking about every mainstream media all over the world. Every government is using a Build Back Better plan, right, which is all about climate. The primary problem for climate is one thing people don't face, not even the bureaucrats. They don't even tell you. The primary problem is we're stripped from our sixth sense. We can't think straight. We think unnaturally. And when we think unnaturally, on reverse psychology, 95 to 99% of the time, we think too much. And that's what drives everything in negative fields. Because 5 senses with a high IQ, it's negative fields. It only makes you good at what you do, but in fact, not intelligent. We're stripped from our sixth sense. And that's our basic common sense. Our sixth sense is 7 times more positive power in energy. You can study that anywhere. But 5 senses negativity, there's no power there. So we're having a glitch in our biological system, and we can see it in cell study research. Our immune system in our organic state is 27 times more powerful than vaccination. But you know what? We've collapsed more than 2/3 to 95% of our immune system. Most people, in fact, do need a vaccination. And you can see how many people just recently died from both COVID and the jabs. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what it is. It's the same D&D fix has been going through the roof non-stop for 24 years. But people weren't focused on these things before these things come about. But you see, the whole world was avoiding this for 23 years. In 20 years alone, mental disorders and D&D fix went up 5 times. 5 times from the statistic in 1999. That means no one's doing anything about it. And, it may not be us sitting here, but when you start talking about people being awake, there's only about 100 million people awake. There's only 40 million people that's gone through the World Transformation Movement, which is the cure for this. And what is really amazing is that we have the top biologist in the world today that every scholar in the world calls the man that found the cure of the human condition and understanding ourselves biologically, the holy grail of understanding ourselves. And, he studied Plato and the human condition for 45 years, which is from the days of Noah. The human conditioning is also what we see in the Bible as being possessed by the devil. The voices in your mind that are ultimately designed for human extinction, as declared by the top biologists and the top 15,000 scientists in the world. Now, we found a cure for this, thinking outside the mind and restoring our sixth sense back into our primal state. So we understand something. We were declared to be in post-human stage. This is why people like Harari and Klaus Schwab and these people, they say we're no longer human. We're hackable animals, right? They say we're no longer productive. And that's because we think too much with a high IQ and we lost our biological genes, right? Look, put it this way. Take an Aboriginals, right? They run around barefooted on stones, something like that for 5 hours without any sweat. If we go out there and run around on stones, you'll hurt your feet too much. You know what I mean? Like, we're soft now, right? We're not like we used to be. We've been conditioned so much through greed, power, temptation, and materialistic things that controls every aspect of our life now. Take a look at the world today. How often do you go to the bus or the restaurant and everyone's sitting on a phone, polarized, right? And if you take the phone of most people, it's their best friend. For God's sake, It's become their best friend. They did a survey with 12-year-old kids in school all around the world in classrooms, right? And they discovered that 87% of kids under 12, they believe their phone's the best friend. And they're sexually frustrated 8 years old because they watch porn, and 80% of parents don't even know. They give them an iPhone when they're 5 years old. What do they expect? You know, like they don't take them out to play in nature and with kids to be in harmony because they're too worried about the kids getting hurt all the time. They've got to be out there and kick sand in their own face. They've got to play in some mud because that's how we get immune to things. You know, to go out there and play in the dirt and rumble with the dirt, because we are created from dirt. We are created from nature and we're in harmony with it. And, you know, that's where we're compassionate about things, but we've become disconnected from nature and life and all the things we are in harmony with. And it's basically the kingdom that's our church, because we are in complete harmony with nature and we communicate with it. And that's what I want to tell you. You know, I saw a video today, and I just want to say this because I had the same experience. When I was chosen, the very moment I was chosen, I went into this complete other dimension. And I was floating over this place, right? And everything in nature, everything with sand, soil, and water, it's like I was part of it. It's like I was connected to every single living thing, and it's extraordinary feeling, right? It's right outside this dimension. And you know what's funny is that a lot of people's coming out lately and having these same experiences. That we're at a brink of society where God is making connections with people about the same thing. It's about Mother Nature. It's about life. It's about love. It's about light, right? It's about these things that we're so disconnected from because we've been too busy. Most people wake up in the last 3 years and think they know everything. Listen, this has been the problem for 60 years. It was becoming a global concern in the 90s. And when you do realize that the primary problem is we can't think straight, we consume too much, 7 times more per capita in 45 years. What's extraordinary about this is in the last 3 years alone, we've gone up in consumption 3 times. We consume 6 times more on the internet, buying, packaging, and throwing stuff away. We can't throw stuff away anymore. Like in the UN, they've got orders out all over the countries, in every country here now. They can't throw more stuff away. The average person up here throws between 100 and 150 kilos of clothes away per person per year. Like it's insanity. They buy 7 times more on the internet up here, right? And they've got nowhere to go. They've got nothing to do. It's too cold all the time. And they just consume like Pac-Man. And, you know, like the consumption between the Nordic and you know, the Western countries is phenomenal. And it's driven all the slavery system in a lot of countries. That's why we have 14 countries collapse. Prime Minister gone, you know, and the presidents are gone. Sri Lanka collapsed, right? We all know Sri Lanka collapsed. Pakistan collapsed. Kazakhstan collapsed. Venezuela collapsed 6 years ago, and they're still in survival mode. Now we have 6 countries in Middle East that's collapsed, and ISIS is selling water for more than a barrel of oil. And, you know, when you understand how the slavery system's set up, you understand what it's doing to society as well in nature and how much it affects everybody. But when you're starting to get animals going around in circles around the world, right, in big flocks everywhere, they're in confusion and frustration. When a tsunami comes or a volcano comes, they run away. Right now they're going around in circles. And we know for a fact that when magnetic fields go like this pole shifts, we know animals go around in circles because when the mammoths got wiped out, they know it's from a pole shift because in Siberia, they're still taking out elephant tusks there non-stop. They go out there every year and collect elephant tusks from the old mammoths. And there's even a 2-hour program about this about 2 years ago. They're still doing it now. There's so many mammoths out there, but where they were frozen in time, right? You know, that's where they've got full mammoths out of completely preserved. But some of those places where the tusks are found, they found them where they were going around circles. They found them in a circle. So they were going around circles when they were frozen. And because we know that one issue there, we know that animals go around in circles all over the world today. We know why. Because the magnetic field's out and the power's out. We also discovered that 550,000 cattle that died in Australia in 2019 with 80,000 horses died for the same reason. Now we found 550,000 cattle died in Kansas, you know, 6 months ago, same reason. And 650,000 sheep died in Middle East for the same reason. We're hearing farmers talking about their sheep walking around in circles for 30 days until they starve themselves to death. And it's just insane, right? Now we're seeing flocks of sheep and what is it? Antelopes, I think they are, that running down together in Africa, and massive flocks of more than 100,000 going around a big, massive circle, nearly a kilometre wide. Like When you start seeing things like this and animals are so lost with confusion, you can see the negative fields all over the world. And we drive these negative fields. And as we're doing this, we're losing our power at the same time, because positive human beings have their sixth sense and the most positive power and energy, and we conduct to an outside influence in our reality. You know, when you go to sleep, your body repairs. Everybody knows that, right? But when you wake up, you're psychological, like you're conscious all the time, and you think you're conscious thoughts with high IQ all the time, and our body starts working corruption, curse, pollution with pollution. But if you think outside the mind, your body can repair the genes, the immune system, the same way as you sleep. And we discovered that the most instinctive human beings that thinks instinctively 95 to 99% of the time, and only use this part of their mind 1 to 5% of the time to think with, just to work things out with, right? If you think instinctively non-stop, your body starts to repair your genes and immune system. And we can also slow down the progression of aging. We've discovered all that. Life preserves. And we discovered life preserves when you go back to primal state. But we've got to work on that a lot. Do you know what I mean? And going through this great awakening, you know, we've got to understand we've got to reconduct the power, because the biological system's falling apart because there's no power. And we're 50 billion volts in our body, 1.4 volt in every body cell, 35 billion of them, right? And our body cells in our heart controls the whole system, the whole biological system. When you think outside the mind, you have a vortex of information, the same as a child from 0 to 7. A child from 0 to 7 masterminds a computer game between 4 and 7 and moves up to 7 times faster than an adult. Think about this. Bruce Lee, by 24, masters mind and can move 7 times faster than anyone could think. Bill Gates at 24, he was a mastermind and he had no education. He was illiterate. Became the richest man in the world. Jesus at 24 broke free of amnesia, and that's what it's all about. He first discovered who he was when he was 24, when he learned to master his mind, and he could do many things. And he said, think outside the mind, you can do what I can and more. We now discover that's the truth. When he also broke free from amnesia, he taught his disciples. He brought them through amnesia for 7 years, and then they did what he did. They could also heal people. Now we know we can do that, okay? And there's a few people on earth right now, right, that's been dead 2, 3, 4 times and can heal things and can walk out of hospital in 5 minutes. That takes people maybe a week or 2 to fight for their life to get out of hospital. Okay, people can react so much quicker. That's got light. And our major conduction is what our main food source is. We should only be eating 1 meal a day at night time, and we should be eating the right stuff and the right molecules to conduct with. Iron's important, iodine crystal, because we have graphene oxide serum from the back of our pineal gland that makes us conduct. You know, we all talk about the third eye, right? The Christ oil. I think you've heard that before. Okay, and the chakra. Everyone's talking about the Christ oil and the chakra and the third eye. I'll tell you something with basic common sense with engineering and how lost we really are when people talk about this. It's a gut feeling survival mode. Everyone knows the gut feeling. You can feel things with your instincts when something's coming, right? When you walk into a place, like a pub, for instance, right? You've got people sitting in the corner and they seem a little bit arrogant and rude, maybe a bunch of bikies, right? They seem a bit evil. You just want to get out like lightning because you feel the atmosphere straight away. Sometimes it's happy people in the corner and you feel fantastic immediately and you want to stay there. Well, you can walk through a household without anyone being there and feel the same way the first time you walk into a threshold. You know, you ever walk to a place and you feel either good or bad when you walk in there? Same thing, right? You can feel it with your sixth sense. You can feel things. Well, what if you could feel that 10 times more powerful? Because you can. If we can only use it 1 to 5%, we have a shitload to gain. And to think that you're awake now, let me tell you something. David, I can a lot of people talk about this. We have a vortex of information with 7-fold wisdom and knowledge. When you conduct to your most positive fields, you have to understand how to conduct. There are different frequencies in this world. And you hear about frequencies, right? And there's many frequencies, but most of them are negative when we think all the time. And they're outside influences that have a profound effect on our reality. When you think and convey feelings to thoughts, your mind's always talking to you, right? When you argue with yourself to make a decision, and a voice tells you to do it, and another one tells you not to. You're always arguing with yourself. That's known as a matrix system. That's the gnostic web, where you're tangled in the web and you don't know who you are. To think outside the mind, you're free from that, free from the emotional feelings. And to be cured for the human conditioning is to understand that we were supposed to master our mind in a whole different way, instead of being on reverse psychology when we go to school and the genes fall apart. Because that's what happens. We create certain molecules from 0 to 7, and they die between 7 and 15. And they don't come back because we think too much and shut down the pineal gland. And people don't understand this concept. It takes more than 7 years to become a gnostic mastermind. Everybody knows that for human history. It takes a certain process and a great dedication, right, to master your mind. And the only people that teach us that correctly is monks, Buddhists, and Shulam masterminds and the indigenous people. And people really knows this, masterminds. And that's why Jesus was known to walk with the monks and the Buddhists and the Shaolin masterminds, because he was educated that way with 17 years. That's removed from the Bible, of the very footsteps he wanted you to follow. You know what I mean? And if we understand that concept alone, right, we understand what the inverted is, because, there were two Gnostic masterminds back in the old days, 5,000 years ago. Gilgamesh was one, right? Osiris was one. The all-seeing Iris. They were Gnostic masterminds and also beat the death experience. They could resurrect the same way Jesus could. And that goes into biblical history. So they could beat the death experience because they went walkabout to discover who they were and broke free from amnesia. And that's what's so interesting about this. Breaking free from amnesia, knowing who you are, you can also communicate with nature, because Elijah, when he goes to the desert for 40 years, the birds feed him. The birds feed the Australian Aborigines as well. So does nature. And only the people that's off the grid. And that's an ability that's dying because they're the last human beings born on Earth. And only a handful of people has learned to master their mind. Like, Jess, I've seen 3 people levitate a 2-ton stone. So's David Wilcock, right? And some people can do that, right? But they stay off the grid, and it only happens in an emergency. It doesn't just happen out of the blue, like to show up and create miracles, you know what I mean? Or should I say magic tricks? And that's something we don't understand. These abilities come when you're in an emergency, when you need it, right? To defend yourself, right? It's like you're given the God-given gifts in that moment. And you can't just perform miracles to show off or do magic tricks. And that's why you can't just demonstrate it on social media platform, because you know what? It never worked like that. It works in a moment of need. But if you can understand this, we have the profound, we have the creation we have the divine power, creation, and destruction from 2 outside influences in our reality. But it's whatever wolf you feed. But when you think instinctively, some people think with their animal instincts, which is known as the blue pill, to come to the conclusion with reason like lightning, right? They have no care factor. And that's what's interesting, because Bill Gates used those tools with his animal instincts with a high IQ to mold everything. But he is a mastermind. And, that's what David Icke explains, that the Gnostic mastermind explained in the old days, like Enoch and people like him back in those days. The Gnostic masterminds explained it perfectly correct. We have some that are inverted. That means they're opposite to us. We are loving, compassionate creatures. We want harmony. We want peace. We want to learn to love one another. We want to be in tap with nature and each other. You know what I mean? With loyalty, honor, respect, moral, voice, inspiration, encouragement. Well, that sort of stuff's gone now. It's nowhere near what it used to be. Too much psychological behavior, too much psychosis. And the fact is, we're declared to have psychosis because we think too much. Whether you suffer from mental disorders or not, we know that every human being on earth has 7,000 gene defects. It's not very much, and not most people wouldn't even know. But when you have that many gene defects, you have that many gene defects to fix as well. Now, that's been studied and proven that we have defective genes up to 7,000 every person on earth, except for a handful of people. And that's what's extraordinary, because we can pull it down to positive and negative in one simple aspect. 6 years ago, we grabbed 6,000 gurus, masterminds, and put them together in India in an operation by the biggest mental health research ever conducted in global history. When they did this, they got 6,000 people to sit down and meditate and use their power. Their power changed the atmosphere on Earth, and they could measure the fields going all around the planet. And in those measurements, they discovered in 12 months, 67% of murders went down and 38% of violence went down. In 12 months, just from 6,000 people being in the right mindset. That's why we have people all over the world through the World Transformation Movement that's hooked up more than you could imagine. There's 40 million people behind this. And you can go into the World Transformation Movement. This is the primary pump of climate. This is the #1 bolus in the world today, and the 15,000 top scientists. This includes Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Jordan Peterson, Joe Dispenza, Winhoff, and all the top physiologists in the world today. All the top scientists are moving the same motion with New Earth, the Ark, the World Transformation Movement. All these movements is to go back to a primal state, to think with our intuition. And most people avoiding this. It's a primary pump of climate. And believe me, what's happening in the world is going to bulldoze the world. And people don't believe in it. They've got control of everything. The top scientist in the world is moving the World Transformation Movement. And if you look at Jeremy Griffiths and the World Transformation Movement and listen to his 14 videos, this is available where anyone can get help in any country in the world, and it's all free. right? So there's no cost in this, and it's not for any material motive or purposes whatsoever. This is being moved across the world to help people have faith in their instincts, and they're using every platform in the world because there's so many narratives, so many new belief systems, and people fall into new belief systems all over the world. So they're using every aspect, right? They're using ESE systems to repair DNA. So doing molecules, right, with certain molecules you conduct within the UNIFED division. That's all set up by NASA. Okay, you can take any way you want. There's so many different ways. The fact is this: you and I and our platform here and the people following us, we're one group of people, but we're a small group if you compare with 8 billion people. So, you've got to start sort of thinking about the fact that no matter what we believe in and who we follow, they're actually trying to help every civilization in the world. That's why they've been putting UNIFED systems in all over the world. You've probably seen Jason Shacker traveling around with this, with Dr. Sarah Williams. They're really pushing every platform to repair DNA and immunity system, right? Even Klaus Schwab and Harari is saying that we're gonna take free will from people, and people think of the worst all the time, but they have to, man. They have to get people right back on track, and they said it in 2015. I'm not agreeing with them, but they are trying to stop defective genes, and that's what's happening all over the world today. What people don't listen to is the amount of people who are repairing the genes. There's already been videos come out now about the jabby jabbies, right? And the things that's happening in people's minds, where they now already are starting to talk about the fact that they're creating the immortality tools. And those immortality tools, we're going to start seeing things in 2 or 3 years with mRNA technology, and how this is going to start having, a profound effect on people that are positive. But people are negative, that think too much, they're going to have an adverse effect because they don't have any power. You know what I mean? And everything about graphene oxide serum is about the fact that we create it organically from our pineal gland, and we can't create it anymore. So when you go into methamphetamine from magic potions, they are a conductor. They conduct because graphene oxide comes from iodine crystals, and it's a crystal. And it's a crystal. If you look up at graphene oxide, they call it a demon molecule. Well, it has the power of creation and destruction. It's known as the black glue in the Matrix. The black glue starts to take over Keanu Reeves, right? And he breaks free from it because he's got the power, right? And it is a molecule that they found through the CERN machine, the God particle. They spun up in 2008 to 2012. They wanted to discover what the God particle was, and they discovered, my God, is this a particle that's in methamphetamine that conducts people? And now we can go back in history when we use this and realize why people had superhuman abilities, right? And that's something they've only discovered recently, and that's why it's really heavily in the dark as well. But they know what it is. I know what it is. I've been working with this stuff for 40 years, man. And I've seen what the adverse effect are with methamphetamine. And believe me, it's only a mind manipulation drug, but I've seen superhuman abilities you'd never dream of. I've seen a person pick up a car, and then if I ask him to do it 5 minutes later, he can't. Right? He can't do it 5 minutes later.
Well, that's like the woman that, seen her child get ran over, a car rolled back over the car, and there's 110, 115-pound woman grows and lifts up the car with one hand, pulls the kid out with the other hand, and then ask her to lift that car again. Not a chance she could ever, not a chance you could ever do it.
Not a chance. It's like I made a video the other day about the car chase. Remember I told you about the car chase I was in? I made a video about that, and I said, look, you can go and you can FOI the videos for this because it's all part of the transcripts and proceedings, right? It's all been through the court. And when you look at the videos they use there, like I don't say nothing on videos. I never say nothing about this on any video. But I urge people to have a look because you'll get as much shock as the cops have. When you see the way I go through traffic, you can't explain it. I mean, even I look back at the videos and thought, my God, did that really happen? Because literally when you slow the cameras down, you're going through cars without scratching them. Like, and it's not explainable, but something happens. And I can't explain what happens. There's no way in the world I can explain what happens in that moment. But you know what? They've got heaps of photos of this, films, live films. And I've seen things like this. You know what I mean? I saw a guy get trapped one day. And like, we can't work it out. He was trapped by 3 cop cars in a cul-de-sac, and they blocked him, and he drove straight through 2 cop cars, right? Like he was going to ram both of them, but he never moved them. Like they should have just gone bang, right? But something happened in that moment where he drove through the cars, and it's only a meter wide, but he drove through. without a scratch on any car, without moving them.
Wow.
And you know, like you hear these stories, and they're very rare. But you know, in the underground world where people are getting chased in cars and bikes, you hear these stories all the time, and you think this is crazy. This is crazy. But then all of a sudden you start to see something like this happen, and your mind's blown away. But you know, they call it the twilight zone. You know what I mean? And something happens, right, with our instincts when we're pumped. And that instincts, right? There's an old saying, man, you know, like they're talking about man against machine. You've heard that story, right? We're coming into an age of man against machine. It's really man against robot, right? Man is machine. We're designed like a machine. We're designed to have an impact, right, that we don't understand with an outside influence. And when we understand how that gets used, you can see how Keanu Reeves uses in the Matrix, right? And that's the people that reach us with RSVP that has massive miracles. They're the masterminds in this world. And they're not the normal people. But what you've got to understand is that the Great Awakening, there's only certain people that really knows the ropes. And there's always ever been a handful of people. It's never been any different for human history because everybody suffered the human conditioning. And Plato describes it that the only people that knew how to cure people from the human conditioning and do extraordinary things without ever suffering from any stress, fear, anxiety, confusion, frustration, or anything was those dynastic mastermind, which was known as all the prophets and also the others from the other bloodline. You know, there's always the Freemasons, what we call the icons. And they had those abilities, right? Because they knew something. They knew how they were confusing everybody else. They knew how to set the standards on everyone as a reverse psychology. And that's what you learn about life and why only 11 people believed in Jesus and the rest threw stones at him. Same with Moses. No one believed Moses, right? They always said that Gnostic masterminds were crazy because they're so intelligent, right? That they make you look stupid. And so you feel aggressive about it because they're so right about things that it hurts. When you realize how wrong you are all the time, it hurts to be wrong all the time. And you don't want to be corrected all the time by anyone, you know what I mean? Not all the time. And, but that's what it's like to be around someone who's so intelligent that they can correct everything you do that you don't even see the adverse effects from. Like the dominant effect on the decisions you make, you often don't see them. And they see the things we can't see. Do you know what I mean? And they can also see the answers that's right in front of your face that we can't see either. And to understand that, take Bruce Lee, who can move 7 times faster. You know, you take a person who's a Shiller mastermind, absolute mastermind, he can put a blindfold on and you can put 6 black belt karate experts there. And he knows every person coming. He can feel it with the 6th sense. You know, the same as an animal can, right? And we have that ability. But we have to master our mind and understand it's a frequency of love. And that's what's so important. See, Shiller masterminds and monks and Buddhists, they don't fight karate for defense. They just do the art for a reason, right? To learn to master their mind. They always use the art to master their mind, right? And to pump adrenaline to be with their 6th sense, to activate their 6th sense. Because to close your eyes and feel your 3rd eye wide open, the one that's always shut, you know what I mean? It's how you use your instincts to the maximum capacity with your body cells on the outside to fight, to feel the frequencies, right? And all the atmosphere. When one thing moves, it moves the frequencies to your body cells. And you can feel that, right? When you're really activated, you can feel someone that's got you on their mind coming for hundreds of meters away, right? You just know something bad's coming, like a gut feeling. I think the cops are coming, you know, type thing.
Someone yesterday in the kind of the big panel people that we had for 7 hours and 47 minutes, one of the guy was talking about that they did this test and they tested it where they would pick some random person, not the actual person, but they would pick and they would think about that person, and then that person would phone them. Like they would do these random tests where they it's not like, say, this was set up because they say someone would pick random people where they would just think about them, and then that person would call them. They would automatically know that they, you know, hey, they should call. So this is the powers that we do have, especially if we practice and utilize and work on these skills, because this is in everybody, right, Kim?
Yeah. See, that's the whole thing, right? If you think about this, right, this is where things are so ridiculously unbelievable. My walk of life, I was confused like anybody else, right? If something happened in my life, people say, oh, you must be having a moment, you're dreaming, right? And I'd get convinced of that. I'd seriously be convinced of that, right? But when you're going through my life, right, living on the streets with drugs, right, seeing a lot of ugly things, getting involved with a lot of rubbish, you know what I mean? Walking my life, getting involved as a drug lord and walking this kind of life, you're on edge all the time. You're putting yourself on edge, right? So you always, like people think we've got it easy, but you always got eyes in the back of your head, you know, like when you're running around doing things you shouldn't be doing, and you know the cops are watching all the time, you're alert all the time, man. You got to be alert, right? And it's at those times in an emergency, because you know you don't want to get caught, right? You just don't want to get caught. It's not because you're a hero. It's because you're just sharp and you're just alert and just like, oh man. And you just hang around your mates. Like I get labeled as the biggest drug lord in the country, man, for fuck's sake, right? And you know what? I was hanging around with mates. Like we were just mates. We were just cruising, doing the same thing, right? But that's the way you get labeled. You just get labeled because they want to throw mud at you, but they see you as being the intelligent one. So you got to be the bad boy, you know what I mean, type thing. And when I sit down and read the documents about myself, the first time I ever read my documents, man, I was spinning head out for about 4 weeks. I couldn't believe what was written on those documents. I never saw myself like that. But I started to open up my mind about certain things that look at things in a different perception. We were the first people to bring meth into the underground world in the whole world. There was only amphetamine up till then. They only had amphetamine and ADHD medication and that sort of stuff and all those products in the pet pills. We were the first people to meth in the underground world, and then they put it into ADHD medication in the around the early 90s, man. You know, people don't realize that. And that was because it was exposed. We had it all over the streets. So we were using what they were keeping to themselves, right? They didn't want us to use that. They wanted to use something that was worse. That's what I said. We created an organic meth that took down the highest death tolls and the highest gang killing and all that. And it did, because they were creating the stuff that was bad. That was deemed to be dangerous. And that's what's so extraordinary about things when you really understand what Brahma does and what these people are doing, because these people that sent 10 ton amphetamine to Amsterdam and Florida for 14 years straight, they weren't doing it illegal, Jess. This was legal. It was pseudoephedrine that deemed to be dangerous in 1980, right? So it went into the underground world, but this was already set up. They already pumped so much business with this all over the world that every truckie in the Western civilization was on the shit, man, right? And it was taken as a joy tablet. It wasn't seen as a drug. You know, so many people were on this. Is incredible. So the market was already set up. So when they moved into the underground world, methamphetamine was still deemed to be the safest drugs in the world. There was no law against it. So when the scientists moved in there, they just saw a great living, a great potential of making good money, you know, by selling and distributing this all over the world. And they did that, right? But they weren't doing anything illegal. Not until 1994. And that's what makes this so extraordinary, right? You know, that's what I'm saying. They weren't criminals that was doing this. They were top scientists in the world. So when we got involved with these, we didn't get involved with a bunch of criminals. We got involved with the two top scientists in the world and the top organization that worked with all these scientists from Hitler. That's who they were. So they had all the recipes for all these things, right? And what is it really all about? Well, it's about production. It's about study on activating people in their primal state, and they've been keeping an eye on this for years, right? It's been a long structured plan, believe it or not, and you can see this as good and evil, but it's mRNA technology. It's been designed in certain ways and been using this in the underground world for 40 years to test it. It didn't just begin now, man. I can tell you that. But that's what people think. But no, they find it down to, you know, to this art here where now we're in post-human stage and people think too much. And gene defects and mental disorders are going through the roof. And so it's consumption because we consume too much, and it's all a marketing strategy. So, you know, something has to give way. And I'm not agreeing with anything. But when people can't face the truth for more than 24 years, you have to stop and wonder, what are you going to do about the whole human population when they can't think straight? And gene defects are going through, and so is mental disorders. But, you know, no matter what, we can't change what's happening. And we never will, because there's too many people inverted now. And it fits biblical prophecy about post-human stage, and we need to resurrect humanity back in their primal state. And that's what we discovered. And Winhoff was chosen for this as well. And he's won a Nobel Prize for 27 Guinness Book of Records for human abilities by using his primal instincts. And that's what he says. Think outside the mind. It's instinctive. And you can do what I can and more. That's what Winhoff says all the time. And, you know, he studied this for 45 years and won a Nobel Prize. He knows what he's doing. And he reactivates the molecules that we create from 0 to 7. Which is the methapig from adrenochrome. That's what I'm saying. Your gut feeling survival mode, and the shiver in your spine is the 33-degree Freemason steps. The shiver in your spine is Jacob's ladder that makes you activate your pineal glands, be alert, light, and aware, like a child from 0 to 7 that masterminds a computer game. But you see, when you like this with a meth effect, right, you're actually in a time where time stands still. As where when you're sitting there, sophisticated with a high IQ, you're always fast to get to nowhere, never enough hours in the day. But when you're in another mindset, right, everything slows down. And that's what I'm saying to you. When you're in a high-speed chase and you come up to a point where you're about to have an accident, right? You know, whenever a person has an accident, they always tell you, oh, man, it's like 20 seconds when I went into it. But it's only a split second. It's like everything slows down. And you slow down so you can react 7 times faster. When you're really instinctive, that's people that can react immediately. It seems to slow the picture down so you can respond faster, right? And the more instinctive you are, the more you can slow down in that whole twilight zone, because you can feel the accident come before it even happens. So you can completely avoid it. You can feel that driver in the front's about to turn out in front of you. And for some reason, you know before he does it. And it's hard to explain, but your instincts has full control when you're completely tapped in and you don't think about it. That's it. That's the amazing part. You just respond like lightning and you can't even explain what happens. But things happen that don't normally happen. But you see, most of us think about, oh, what am I going to do? Right? Like, oh, what am I going to do? Am I going left or right? When we think about it, we go into shock as well. You know, people go into shock sometimes and can't respond. And some people have fast reaction. And that's the difference between people that's got light and faith in their biological system and people who don't. And, you know, we take things.
Yeah, some people just freeze. Some people in a situation, they'll freeze opposed to other people that will just jump into action and, you know, just try to do the best that they can in this, you know, traumatic or, you know, kind of situation.
Well, let me explain something to you that a lot of people are not aware of. When they did the mental health research, they did everything you could imagine, like every fine art you could imagine. There was 15,000 top scientists involved in this. One of the things they did was stimulation and reaction in a stimulation machine, right, to stimulate an accident. Now, they had a stimulation done about 25, 30 years ago the same way. They have people's reactions, you know, in general. And the first readings and designs that they had of these kind of tests was back about 25 or 28 years ago, I think. When they do the study reports from back then on people's reactions, back then, right, when you compare the reactions with the stimulation they did in 2018, it's dramatic. The difference, you know, like today they can get 1,000 people in this stimulation where it's a close call, and more than 95% of people can't respond on time. Only 5% can, right? We're back about 30 years ago, right? It's a lot different back then, right? There's a lot more people responding fast. And when you see tests like this done with activation and people responding, we're not going forward, we're going backwards. And that's what I find astonishing. So many people in the world think they're thinking in the 5th dimension. 5 dimensions downwards is the 5 senses. It's always been the same. It's a high IQ. It's thinking outside the mind through the 6th, right? That goes through an influence with an outside reality, right? It's enigma and a gravity of love. All the top frequencies of the most positive fields, they're above. All the lower fields is from the 5th dimension downwards. They're all the negative fields, right? That's in their psychological behavior. When you go high up in different dimensions, you've got the higher light and the higher power, right? That's why the heavenly power, right, is the most important gravity of all, right? Because it's the most important frequency. And that frequency, you can only tap into that with one tool in the most positive energy, which is what we call the God power, right? Or the God frequency, or being in the Father's image. There's many different explanations for this. But that power, to have that turned on at its maximum capacity, is that you've got to live by your morals in the right place. Loyalty, honor, respect, moral, remorse, inspiration, encouragement. You have to be in that image to have that absolute power. And it's a superpower. And you can feel it's like a gravity of love that pours all over you. And you can feel your aura and your body cells light up like you're high all the time, man, like you're on meth all the time. And it's fantastic. And you can't even explain that to people. You want to deliver that to people. You want to give it to people. But people think about it too much. They're satisfied with the reptilian brain. They've got to learn not to think and have faith, because it is something available to all of us. And that's why Jesus said, it's not like you think, it's available to all of us by having our principality in the right place. Then we have the power. And the frequencies, there are many frequencies. There are 200 negative frequencies, right? That's from the 5th dimension downwards. We use G 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 uses a different frequency. You can congest G4 and congest G5, and they don't interfere with each other because they're 2 parallel worlds that floats between each other. The frequencies float right through each other as if they're both in the same timeline, right? But they're not. They're in parallel worlds. That's why no radio wave can interfere with another radio wave, and nor can a radio wave interfere with your radio wave. If you're attached to the most positive fields, it's an outside influence that goes through every single frequency that's in the fifth dimension downwards, because it goes through everything. And you conduct with that. You know, like there's an old saying, no weapon can form against you that can prosper, right? And it can't, right? G5 and these things cannot prosper, right? Unless you give it authority to them. If you fear it, it can interfere with you. So what you believe in creates a placebo effect. If you have a fear for these things, it can overcome you. If you have a fear for the jabbies, it can overcome you. But if you don't, and you don't believe that it's going to hurt you, it won't.
What about, like, say the planes that they're spraying? So in my case, I see them, they aggravate me. I don't fear them. I don't feel any way that they're harming me in any way, but it still bothers me that they're painting up the sky. So I'm aware of them. It aggravates me to a point, you know, I'm filming them, I'm doing different things, but I've never felt any ill effects from them. I don't fear them. I'm not afraid of them, but I'm still consciously aware and trying to expose things. So how does that work into the essence that, you know, you're not afraid, but you're still, you know, giving it energy?
I mean, it's faith. I mean, it's a placebo effect. You have to think outside the mind, because your mind controls you. If you have any fear whatsoever, any thinking about it, any way, shape, or form, look, if it's like Dr. Bruce Lipton say, if you believe you're going to die from cancer, you will, right? But if you don't believe it, you have the power to overcome it and repair your body cells. Now, that's been proven on people before. There's a lot of people who've repaired cancer that's been at death's doorstep, and unexplainable reasons why. You know, you can give it this method or that belief or that belief, but there's always been cases that have been extraordinary. It's just we don't talk about them because it doesn't suit the pharmaceutical world or the doctors. But there's been many different methods that's been used before. But at the end of the day, when we take the placebo effect with medication, we can see with the placebo effect medication what it can do. If you have faith in something, right, and they did a test on this, if they told a person, 1,000 people, that this is going to heal your DNA or do this and do that, some people believe in it, and those that believe in it enough, they can do it. But it's only a very minute number. When they started training people to have more faith in their instincts and their primal state, they could also see that they could escalate this, right? They could escalate their belief system so they could create more ability to repair themselves. So it all comes down to the faith system. It all comes down to those same tools and having positive power in it. So the key is you creating the relationship with that positive power, which is creating a relationship with the Father, because the frequency of love, that's what it's called. And it's, in the Bible, they say the love pours all over you, the glory of God's love, right? Because when you're connected to that power, that's what you feel in your body cells. You feel like, wow, man, it's just mind blowing. And there's no other way to explain it. Like when the light comes to me, the orb of light, that it's just unbelievable. And the only way you can see that is some of the people on the Min lights in the outback of Australia. You can see some of those people talk about the relationship, but not many people do because they don't have one. But that relationship is the same relationship we talk about in the Bible. It's the same feeling. It's absolutely mind-blowing when you feel this feeling. And it's a gravity of love. It's a frequency that you tap into that's just so perfect. That's beyond any high you've ever had in your life. Any drugs, there's no way explaining it. It's just beyond. The greatest feelings I've ever had in my life, drugs, make love, the whole 9 yards, put them together, doesn't mount up to this. Doesn't even mount up to this. You can't explain it. But once you're hooked into that gravity, you realize those top frequency gives you that power. And that power is just unbelievable when you feel it. And all you feel is love. You feel like you're protected. You feel like the Father's got you. I mean, you could be in the most horrible situation in your life, but all of a sudden, bang, every bit of fear is gone. Anything you know you're in good hands. No matter what, you just know. No one can manipulate you. No one can say anything. You know there's something that you feel, and you know you're in good hands, right? And you just feel extraordinary. And that feeling is the gravity of love. And you know that the only way that you can pull that off is using the same tools. You have to be in the right frequency yourself. You have to be in balance and a total grip of yourself. Not far left, not far right, not egotistical, not this, not that. Not using any inverted tools that we've been programmed with on reverse psychology for 300 years, because you know what, Jesse, we all use them. And if we can't understand that, we'll never understand anything if we don't understand. We live in a society where most people use those tools, and we've been programmed this way from generation to generation. So of course we're affected by this. We all have this egotistical problem to one degree or another. We're afraid of being wrong, and yet we think we are awake and know everything, but we're all searching for more information at the same time, right? And everybody is, because they think too much, and they're always going to satisfy the mind and come up with a reason to believe in things. There's a lot of faith missing here.
Well, that's, I think, the biggest thing that we're fighting against right now is that ego, because people don't want to admit that they were wrong. They don't want to admit that they were fooled. They don't want to admit that they injected poison into themselves. They don't want to admit this stuff. And if you can't admit it, you can't overcome it. You can't get past it because you're still stuck in that program.
Exactly. And you're supposed to release everything. That's why we're told, release the past, for God's sake. Move on, man. I mean, take a look today, right? Let's be honest here, right? How many people talk about narcissism now, right? You can see the people that talk about it, right? They're nervous themselves. I mean, they keep the subject going, and people that they, create on their platform is on the same subject all the time. And you know what? They're weak. They're sensitive, not emotional, and they're not moving on. These aren't professional people, because the professionals say, listen, mate, you've got to move on. Don't keep entertaining the same rubbish all the time and live in the past. But that's what people do today. They're very judgmental and egotistical, and they use those tools. They don't realize that, you got to move on, man. You got to not dwell in the past and move on. And when people can't understand that, we're always wrong in life. We learn from being wrong. I mean, making mistakes is a process of life. You're always going to walk into rabbit holes your whole life. I mean, if you listen to any mastermind in the world, anyone that's about my age, they always say the same thing. You know what you learn when you're 60? You learn you never know. You always think you know, but you never know, right? You learn you're wrong all the time, right? And you go through that egotistical BS yourself when you're 20, 30, and 40. And one day you wake up and think, fuck, man, where's my head at? You know what I mean? We all go into rabbit holes. We all step in the paddle. We all get sucked in all the time. And, we come to a different conclusion a few years later. We change, right? We change our friends. We change our habits. And, some people don't ever change anything. But I think we all go through a bit of change sometimes. And we always learn that we didn't know anyway. You know what I mean? We didn't know anyway. We thought we did, but every time you think you're right about something, you're proven a little bit wrong. Because our concept and our perception is always living in some narrative that we believe in. Once you release that narrative behavior and what you do believe in, and open up your mind and use every single perception that you can possibly use, and look at everything on a global scale rather than looking at what you think. Look what everybody thinks, and look what the majority thinks, and look what the majority of results are, and put all that together. Don't fall into some little narrative that only 5% of people believe in, because the chance of being wrong is very high. Look, we have this opinion that, only we know we're the best, the whole 9 yards, and that's BS, man. Fuck, man. I don't know where this concept comes from, and if people believe in their own truth and manifesting their own truth. I mean, what is this? We just got to drag your ass into court to find out what the truth is, because it's always your truth, and the truth's in the middle somewhere. It always is. You know what I mean? And it's a whole new concept people's falling into psychologically. And it's like you said, people they don't know how to forgive anymore, and they don't know how to be wrong anymore, and they don't know how to move on. I mean, fuck, how do you learn things if you can't handle being wrong? There's nothing to be ashamed of. And I think people are scared now and become so egotistical because they're afraid of being wrong.
Afraid to make a mistake. Afraid to make a mistake.
Well, the problem is we've been programmed so deep to be competitive. And it's the competitive tools that we use because we're embedded with it when we go to education. You go to school to become competitive and consume too much. End of story. It's a proven fact to become competitive in the work field, to compete, right? And we compete with each other, the piss contest. My girlfriend's better than yours. My car's better than yours. I mean, it's an everyday thing now. You look at a big social media platform right now, even Joe Rogan, it's always a piss contest. It's always challenging one another. You know what I mean? Like somebody always wants to challenge you and, I want to ask him, how does he know about that? Like, what is this attitude that's coming so much? It only shows people got no faith anymore, and they want to challenge people, and they want to make a name for themselves and belittle someone. That's the behavior people's adapting to today. And it's a competitive behavior, and it's coming to a conclusion with reasoning as well. And it's not normal. And that's why it's artificial. And people become artificial, so they're artificially intelligent with an outside influence which is an alien invasion from an outside influence in their mind. And that's what the skull's all about. It's the AI world, artificial intelligence, artificial tools, artificial human, artificial high IQ to think you're better in the inverted. And you have an outside influence where the voice tells you to do it all the time. And that's the outside influence that that manipulates you all the time. And that's the voice of your mixed in. That's the human conditioning. That's possessed by the Satan. And he'll always talk to you heavenly, say, oh, no, you can do it, do it, do it. And he'll talk to you heavenly. And so will all those voices. They'll talk to you like they're Jesus Christ. That's why you're told in the Bible. He'll always get you because he talks to you like Jesus Christ. But Jesus won't come around like that in this time. He'll come around like a thief in the night. He'll come from the caves of the prisons because he's an outlaw. He doesn't fuck around. He never did. He smashed the market tables, smashed the gambling tables. And what do you think happens when you smash all the tables up down with gambling? I mean, come on, man. I'd like to see you go and kick all the gambling tables down with all the gamblers, man. You know what I mean? But he just kicked the living shit out of them and said, listen, you're all controlled by Baal. And they shit themselves. And you have to consider that. He kicked the markets, they shit themselves. He took 10 people in the church, 10 or 12 people, and belted the living shit out of them when they were stealing money. Now, why do we talk about Jesus Christ as being, loving compassion with chocolates and roses? He was hunted down from day one. He had to be on the run all his whole life. You know what I mean? You think he's all about chocolates and roses? I don't think so. I really don't think so. You know what I mean? A man that's on the run because he's an outlaw, and so was every disciple because of one reason. They did not comply to the Babylonian beast system by man's laws. And they didn't comply to the religions neither, and made it very clear, no, you're all wrong. It's not like that. It doesn't have a narrative. It doesn't have anything like that. It's Jesus from Nazareth, not Jesus the Christian, right? And a lot of people completely oblivious to this. They're all the Christians, there's another 12 different Christians today. We now know there are 12 different types of Christians because there are 12 different belief systems. Now, you've got to understand, when they've got their facts mixed up so much with their own instincts and their own faith system, we have a serious problem. You know what I mean? When they're confused with their faith system so much and they conquer and divide, now we've got 12,000 different types of religions, for God's sake. And people don't even realize that. 12,000 different types. And people are more confused with their own selfish behavior because of one reason: they're afraid of being wrong. And the fear controls them. And their behavior gets physical about it, but the fear controls them. We know that in their biological genes and DNA study and the cell study research. Doesn't matter what comes out of their mouth and what bubble they live in, 93% of all Western civilization takes one kind of drug or another just to cope. Proven fact. So,
how do we break free from the amnesia?
Well, the crazy part is that there's a lot of methods, right? And one of the greatest methods is go walk about by yourself, completely on your own. Go into nature, off the grid, right? Find somewhere where you can get food, or take a little bit of food with you, but get off the grid completely. The first 5 weeks of your life's going to be terrible. You're going to think, what am I doing out here, right? Just giving everything up. But eventually you break free from every chain that's wrapped around you that you are consumed by and conditioned by. And then one day you wake up and think, fuck, man, I don't want to go back. And you don't want to go back. And when you go back, you feel so intense when you come back, you feel like, you feel real freedom, and you understand what the liberation is, because they always went walkabout for a long time and got spiritually connected in that moment, right? Same with Winov. Winov had a bad problem. His wife died. He went walkabout in the mountains for years, and bang, he had a moment. You know what I mean? And it always seems to be in that moment that people really find themselves. And the monks and the Buddhists always knew that in Zen masterminds. That's why they go on the mountaintops. They get off the grid, away from every negative field, to find themselves and get spiritually connected. But the biggest help today that everybody really needs, and why, to understand something important. Winhoff is an elect that was chosen for this, and he's won a Nobel Prize. He has 27 Guinness Book of Records. And I go into a lot of reasons why 27 is a number you need to pay attention to very carefully. It stands for the Holy Spirit and the divine light. And it's embedded into Book Revelation, Book 27, 27-year walking in Antichrist. And I've brought a lot of details about this before in my videos. Well, 27 Guinness Book of Records for superhuman abilities, because he's gone back to his Miles Date and used those tools. His breathing process, you can study on, right? There's been so much studied on this. His breathing process recreates all the molecules, prepare genes and music. And you can go and see on YouTube, people can't get cured from cancer, MS disorders, Tons of people get cured from mental disorders easy, stress, fear, and anxiety, all these things. An ice bath for 1 minute is enough to bring you out, right, of fight flight mode in ways you don't understand. Cold showers is enough for 2.5 minutes, but an ice bath now and then will really, really take you into a dimension you've never been in. So sit yourself in a nice bath, right, and don't be afraid of it. Go through the fight flight mode. It feels terrible, but it's not going to kill you. Trust me, you can sit in there for 10 minutes and you wouldn't even believe that. But it does something to you biologically you don't understand. There's evidence to back all this up and research done on this. Cold shower a day will keep the doctor away. It starts to make you think instinctively and think outside the mind through the fight flight mode. We're Not Breathing program recreates the molecules that you create from 0 to 7. And it helps you think instinctively because when you do this breathing process, you activate the pineal gland with the adrenochrome and the adrenaline in a positive field when you're lying down with a deep breathing process. And by putting this intensely into action, 1 month you alter so much you've got no idea. Every person I put through this has massive success and just absolutely in love with it and become addicted to it. And a 30-day process and a 30-day test of breathing exercises that you can study. You can study a lot of the research on this and listen to what the specialists have to say. He won a Nobel Prize, man. Do not forget that. And to recreate these molecules with 7 times more positive bound energy, that's tasting your sixth sense and you feel it. You feel the meth effect and you feel tingles all over your body when you do this, right? And it makes you naturally high. It starts to activate the meth effect so you can start recoding it into your memory and you can start using that tool. The more you do it, the more you activate it and bring it into your whole normal life every single day of life. But remember, it takes 7 years to master your mind. What you achieve in this in 12 months is sensational. It gives you a taste that you're moving forward all the time and you become free from all the human conditioning, stress, fear, anxiety, confusion, frustration, delusion, paranoia, and all these things. And believe me, the success rate here is absolutely phenomenal. I advise that you watch Jeremy Griffiths and the World Transformation Movement in 14 of his videos. And believe me, this World Transformation Movement is moving across the planet. Okay. And it will move through all these platforms. But combine these together, trust me, you'll never find more activation than what you find for this because this is how you really activate in your primal state instinctively, naturally, and organically because thinking outside the mind is our organic, natural motor skills. And it's the motor skills we lost. We think too much psychologically, and it's not natural. It's unnatural. Our natural motor skills is to think instinctively in our primal state. And when we do that, we can live to be a lot longer. We're a lot more in harmony with ourselves, absolutely calm, living in balance with ourselves, not afraid of anything, right? And it's a beautiful thing. And if I could give that and embed that into everyone's DNA, I would. But, you know, words and DNA is everything. Your words project through someone's skull into their DNA and has a profound effect. Look, you can all test this yourself, right? If you don't realize how much damage we've got in our DNA, go and get a test. DNA all over the world's gone into coiling, and you can see it on any DNA test. And when you get a DNA test, you can see the coils around your blood cells. And those coils go in coiling, which is corruption, coercion, illusion. You can take a molecule from Unifed in 15 minutes and do a 15-minute test. 15 minutes later, your body cells are separated and work perfectly without being in corruption, coercion, illusion. You can see it with your own 2 eyes in the 15-minute study, right? When you take these molecules, you can see the rings of the sixth sense light up around your body cells. 5 times more light. You can do the same with We're Not Breathing program. When I put you through the same process, before and after, you get the same results with that same DNA test. That means it's instinctive and fired up with power. And you can see it in a DNA study. You can go to any Unifed place and get this set up for yourself and have a look at these things yourself. So you can see your DNA before and after. And you can see how much molecules can change your body cells with light around your body cells. And you can see how the light works in your body when you're activated in your primal state. You can also do with meth that lights up the most, you know. But I don't recommend doing that. But I don't disrecommend it neither because, believe me, methamphetamines never, ever once anywhere in human history recorded or killed anyone. It's the same as what we're seeing today. People had adverse effects from meth because they had a defected gene, right? They already had a pre-existing condition. No one's ever died from meth. Now, I don't recommend just taking any shit off the street. But if you know someone's got clean meth, it's a good tool to activate. It's used in 5-year-old kids, for God's sake. It's used to save every 26 baby that's born. when they can't breathe, because it activates the mind to create the molecules immediately to send a message into the lungs to work when the baby can't breathe.
They give it to babies if they're not able to breathe or if they're struggling, then they give them a dose. Wow.
Up to 1956, every 26 baby used to die, right? You know, when a baby's born, they smack them on the bum type thing, right? That's what they used to do every baby in the long years ago, because when you smack on the bum, you put life into them, right? It's a boom, right? The shock on the mind, and they start breathing, right? So when they're born, they used to smack them on the bum. Now they do it a bit more gently, but they still smack some in the bum if they don't start activating. So they give them a whole smack in the bum to activate them, right, in shock, and they start breathing. But every 26 baby up to 1956, they couldn't get them to breathe. They used to put them in the grid, but they couldn't breathe. And so what they discovered was that methamphetamine with a ventilator, right, when they put them in the baby when it's just born, this is a brand new born baby, by putting them a meth mask, right, it activates the neurons in the mind and sends a message to the lungs so they come out of the crib and live. So now, ever since 1956, they've been saving every 26 baby with the meth. That's what I'm saying. Meth made laboratory correct, but and for the right reasons. It's not like street drugs. You can't compare it to street drugs, but everybody does, because they're all fucked on the head today. I mean, I don't know where people get their ideas from and think that street drugs for opiates and cut and shit like that. They're comparing it with that. You know, meth's been in our society for a long time, and it saves every 26 baby. And like I said, I don't recommend it, but it proves to you that it activates your power, right? It sends the neuro from the mind into the lungs to activate, because the message can't get through. So it has everything to do with power and activation.
Can a person try it once without needing it again and again? Because I think one part of some of these drugs is that they continue on in a spiral, and then it's more about the drugs than what kind of learning that comes from it.
That's why you have to understand. Back in the old days, people used to take pills all the time, right? And 84% of people have had it as a love drug, but they didn't consume it too much neither. They used it in moderation. You know what I mean? Today, people don't seem to understand. What you see on the streets is 16% of people are junkies, right? They consume too much. They can't stay in balance. But you have to understand, all the cops and politicians that use it, and a million people that use this stuff without talking about it, do they go mental? No. You wouldn't even know they're on it, man. They could stand right next to you, and they're some of the most productive people. You wouldn't have a clue. Some of the most intelligent people that you know is on meth. You don't even know it. But that's what makes them highly intelligent, right? That's why a lot of cops and politicians use it. They're using the front line of SAS and all these things. They're using Tom Gun pilots. They're using the whole 9 yards, because their perception changes. That's why it's a good idea to watch a 2-hour video that CIA disclosure that I put up a couple of weeks ago, because it talks about your perception being completely different, and you're full on activated with your perception. And your instincts are very powerful, and you move a lot faster and a lot more active, right? That's why they always know these things.
Do you think that food and drink also keeps us in amnesia? Joseph is asking.
Well, I don't think the food and drinks. I mean, your what you consume, and I find this really funny. Actually, it's a good subject, because in general, the things that we eat, you know, there might be new chocolate bars and new soft drinks, whatever, but it's the same shit, right? We knew exactly what was in those products years ago, right? Everyone's coming out with this thing now. Oh, they're trying to kill us. They're trying to kill us. You were told from the day you were born by your mum and dad, don't eat this and don't do that. It's bad for you, right? Then they give you lollies anyway. Then at 15, they tell you not to eat because it's bad for you. I mean, you're always told what's bad for you. Your doctors tell you what's bad for you. You read it in documents all over the world, bad for you. We've got social media platforms today. We didn't have that in the old days, right? And we knew what was bad for us. And you know what? It's more on social media platform and the internet more than ever. It's in front of your face all the time. And then people want to blame everyone else for what they're consuming. And I think it's brain dead. You know, you're responsible for it. You can't cook your meals and you can't grow your own food. Whose responsibility is that? Yours. So what you go and consume in your stomach and what you put in your mouth all the time, you know what's good and bad for you. It's a moderation that's gone out. And that's what the whole problem is. We're getting more in stress and anxiety and just consuming and buying things to take boredom out, right? Because we think too much. And it's the boredom that's created too much consumption, and we consume so much rubbish today. This is what I'm saying. We should only eat one meal a day. We shouldn't even eat breakfast and lunch. It's a proven fact. We should only have one meal a day. We consume that much rubbish from morning to night. It's unbelievable. We only need 1 meal a day, and it's 10 times more healthier for you. And it's a proven fact. Everything you consume all day is going to make you sick because you consume too much.
Most people consume too much. Ropam is asking, what can you do when you can't handle the cold for ice baths?
When you can't, you just do it again until you can. You force yourself. You absolutely force yourself. You work against the force.
You could
You
probably
really
start
do.
with the cold showers, maybe a 30-second cold shower, 45-second work up your way, and just start,
Yes.
getting your body adjusted to it. When you say
Well,
you can't, you've already defeated your being able to, because, you can maybe work yourself into it.
well, trust me, a cold shower's not going to kill anyone. I come from Australia and I hated cold weather, man. Now I'm in Denmark and it's a freezing cold place, right? Turning the shower on here, are you kidding me, man? It's freezing. And I just forced myself into it. And it might be a bit uncomfortable, but it's not going to hurt you. And trust me, you know, when I was proven something that's really, I find astonishing myself, where he took a group of people, right, from America. They were living in a hotter climate in California, right? He took them up to Poland, where in his backyard, where there's a creek and it's full of snow and ice, man. It's freezing, right? And he takes them down there. They've never done the breathing process. They've never been trained in any way, shape, or form. And he's going to prove a point this time, right? So he takes 4 people down here and puts them in water that's like 6 to 10 below nearly, right? But it's running water. And he says, we're going to get in there for 10 minutes. Now, you're supposed to get hypertension within a couple of minutes when it's that cold, right? And he proves that you can get straight in there and keep 4 strange people from hot climate in there and force them to stay in there. This train them to force themselves to stay in there for 10 minutes, and they all did it, no worries. And, anyone can do it. It's just that your mind controls you, and that's how Satan's got you. When you think you can't do it and you got to use it, that's the mind controlling you. And that's how powerful the mind is. And you have to work against the mind. So when you say, oh, but what if you can't? You can. See, that's the whole point. You think you can't, anybody can. Anyone in any condition can go through this process. But yes, start with a cold shower. And even if you go in there with hot water and turn it to cold, right? But, the idea is to get bang in there to go into flight mode and get used to it. Just get used to it. And if you just do an ice step bath once or twice a month, you don't have to do that very much. Cold shower's a good idea. But if you don't have cold water, I suggest you get a bit of ice water to cool it down. You know what I mean? Because you want a good cold effect just from a good shower. 2.5 minute shower is ideal, right? 2.5 minutes shower, and you get used to it. Believe me, and you end up feeling fantastic. Like, you don't like going in the shower. Nobody likes to go in a cold shower, not even Winoff. But you do it deliberately. I mean, he goes into ice cold water. He doesn't like it, but he does it because once you go through that process, it's magic. It's just magic. It's just like magic that turns on, right? And it's all biologically, and it's going back to paramoral state and getting used to these things that we are so conditioned from. Yeah, because we're so conditioned, we're so soft, we're so weak, and we're so afraid, and we've got to break that cycle.
Are people, like Ropam says, she's allergic to the cold. That's why she can't do the ice bath or the shower. Like, what would you say to someone that believes they're allergic to cold?
Well, I know exactly what she means by allergic to cold, because I always tell people I'm allergic to cold, and I am allergic to cold, right? But it's not the same thing. Like being in cold weather, it kills me. I can't stand the cold weather, right? It literally kills me. I get affected by it real bad. But having a cold shower is not the same. Believe it or not. I know it's cold, but it's not the same as being out in the cold. It changes your whole system. And you just got to put yourself through it. Your mind will always control you. But, at the end of the day, you might suffer from more sneezing in cold weather, but there's no such thing as being allergic from the cold. It's just a figure of speech we use,
She says she gets hives. She gets hives from it, she says.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Yeah, well, that I haven't heard of that before. I haven't heard that before myself.
So would there be an alternative for her to be able to get herself into that,
Well, no.
out of her comfort zone, to be able to feel those things without having to use cold?
No. I mean, she can only do the winter breathing program, but she can't activate the cold. But listen, to cold shower. Anyone can have a cold shower no matter what. She showers, doesn't she? Like, of course you can have a cold shower. It's not being in the cold weather that's the same. It's not the same. You can be in your home in a good environment and go and have a cold shower, right? And there's no drama with that. You only have to have a 1 minute shower. You can have 1 minute shower, and you'd be amazed what it does. But it's not going to give you hives by having a cold shower. It's not the same as cold weather.
When I lived in Cancun, Mexico,
Yeah.
in the building that I was in, they had a water tank that was on the top of the building. And so if I ever took a shower before like 11 a.m., it was
Yeah.
always cold because they didn't have hot water heaters. But if you took it when the sun was baking that tank all day long, then you would actually get a warm shower. So I literally, you know, if I got up early, I'd have to have a cold kind of shower every single day. Like that was just the way of life, was to have a cold shower there.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's proven. I mean, when you go into the cold shower method alone, there's a lot of study you can see on YouTube about this, and you can get all the whole paragraph of everything that you create when you have a cold shower and what happens to your body and your system. And it's amazing, just a cold shower every morning alone. They all say a cold shower will keep your doctor away. You know,
this is what Monica said, is start with a warm shower and end with a 2-minute cold shower. It's extremely refreshing. So that's what I do. I have a nice, really warm shower, get myself nice and warm, open up the pores. And not only it does that, because you open up your pores when you clean, you want to clean, the pores are open. And then you turn the cold water and it closes back up all the pores. And, you know, so as well as you're getting yourself into that, you know, uncomfortable place, but it also is physiologically, you know, doing good to your body to close your pores after you've cleaned them.
It's the same with fasting. Fasting is one of the most powerful things to give you more power and energy as well. We eat too much. And it's proven that your body's a lot healthier if you only eat once a day, right? But trying to condition yourself back to that, you think, oh, no, I need more vitamins, I need more of this. No, you don't. You actually don't. It's just, as long as you don't go into malnutrition and that sort of shit, you know what I mean? But reality is that we conduct with we eat the wrong things. We need more molecules like zinc, iron, magnesium, right? Iodized water, ionization in water is a fantastic thing, right? Because it's what you create in your molecules naturally and organically to conduct with it, and it's in all water. You know, there's a lot of deception right now about the water. Don't take water because your pineal gland is going to shut down your pineal gland. It's your sixth sense that's fucked. And when you can't think instinctively, that's what the problem is. It's got nothing to do with water. And people's living in some massive delusion about this. The best water you can drink is tap water in most places. Some water's a little bit off than the others, but every bit of water you get out of the tap's always neutral. Bottled water is quite often not neutral because it's been sitting on the shelf too long, you know, and been in the packaging so long. And you're better off with tap water than with bottled water, unless you get the right spring water and test it. But the reality is, what's coming out in America all over the place is these new water distillers to clean water with, right? And you know, you got to be careful here because some people have got it right, and a lot of people on social media platform don't, and they think they're intelligent, right? You know, in this age right now, we're getting a lot of people educating about health products and what to do and what not to do, and it's all social media buffs. They're not experienced people, and I find a lot of people educating a lot of things at the moment about Christ, oil shack, and all that. They've got it all asked about. They got no idea what they're talking about. They just got information. Oh, I know, he said, she said, I know. And people giving the wrong information. When it comes to water, like they're starting to push people all around America, and I've seen a million videos about this, to get these water distillers and take everything out of your water and then drink it. And man, that's the worst thing you can do, is take graphene oxide out, because it comes in water. That's where your molecules, the most important conductor, comes from. And 70% of your water, 75% is water in your body. And it conducts with that molecule in water. So when you take that out, you're fucked. And people are doing it all over America. And if you listen to the right people, they tell you, when you do this, make sure you put ionization back in. That's why you got to buy ionization water, liquid, right, to put drops back in.
Well, they used to have iodine in the bread. Like we would get iodine as a daily source, but they took out the iodine out of the bread, and then they've also modified it, and now the body doesn't even recognize it. And I think that's one of the major reasons why people are becoming overweight and obese, is because, you know, the wheat.
It's the wheat. The wheat's gone off, right? Because they made a GMO wheat, right, in Australia in 1890 to 1920. It took 40 years to make a spliced chromosome in the wheat, and that's the wheat we've been using since. Now that GMO's collapsed its chromosomes, right, with the graphene oxide, because graphene oxide comes in nearly everything. We conduct with it. It comes in all molecules, right? And bread is known in the biblical history, right? Bread makes your heart strong because it's a conductor. And that's exactly what graphene oxide is. It's a conductor. We also have it in meat, right? And, it's been in produce food for years because it's iodine. You put it on cuts and scratches, it takes infections away. But it's also a molecule known as a demon or light. That's what it is. It's a light molecule. It's a conductor.
Have you
And
heard
it
of
comes in water.
have you heard of carbon C60? So there's some product, it's called carbon C60. So they're taking graphene, which is, same thing that they make graphene oxide with, but they're taking graphene and they're putting it into either olive oil or MCT oil or coconut oil. And then you're supposed to take a tablespoon of it. And so this graphene, so this metal is supposed to bind with some of the stuff inside to take out some of the toxins. But, it seems like they're trying to put graphene into us with all the different shots and different things that they're doing. It seems like they're trying to overload us with graphene. So I had someone on here that, was promoting, this carbon C60, and they wanted me to help promote it. But a bunch of people, some chemists talked to me and they said, look, we shouldn't be putting these metals into our bodies because, that's kind of one of these things when you have too much aluminum, the Alzheimer's, like they're trying to overbear us with these metals. So they said, maybe you shouldn't be promoting this carbon C60 because it is actually made from graphene. So what's your thoughts on carbon C60 if you've heard of it and know about it?
Well, I don't know much about that product myself. I know this, that we create more than 60 different types of graphenes for our own biological genes and our own molecules. We create 280,000 chemicals. We create it from mud and clay, and we have different types of graphenes, many different types. You take in vitamin C, D, B12, zinc, iron, magnesium. We can go and study this. It's a drug delivery system. We've been using it for 3 years, right? And it's something that comes in most food products, like in a lot of fruits and the seeds. Like in the Bible it says, eat your seeds, eat the fruit and the seeds. Most people don't eat seeds in fruit, right? Well, most seeds have all the proteins and vitamins and all the graphenes in them, right? That actually helps us cure cancer and all sorts of things, right? And we don't have them anymore. We've got too much GMO food, right? Too much GMO food. We've got too much of the wrong molecules, too much chocolate, too much bullshit. Sugar. We fill our guts with sugar, man. And sugar's the biggest killer in the world, right? It really is. Yet we've got to have sugar because it's also crystal. All the crystals combine, right? But we can overload. But our body is resilient when it's in the right, when it's in its primal state. We've got a resilient body. We've got molecules to fight everything with, right? That's why no weapon against us can really prosper, right? When we're in the right mindset. But when we overload with things and we don't keep things in moderation, our whole biological system goes out of whack. And that's what's happening with our whole immunity system, mental disorders, gene defects, and the whole 9 yards. And it's happening on a global scale and accelerating. And what we've got to do is get our mindset right, because every decision you make is what alternatively has an outcome in your life, obviously, right? Whatever you consume, whatever you think about, whatever you entertain with, it's all pollution, man. So even if you entertain yourself with a lot of million different things, you're just causing more information, and more confusion, more frustration at the same time. So it all becomes part of the pollution process because we're completely in the wrong mindset, listen to the wrong things, entertain the wrong things, consume the wrong things. And that's why every single thing's responsible for one thing, and one thing's responsible for every death in the world. 93% of people die every day from stress-related diseases. End of story. Everything you die from in the world, from gene defects, mental disorders, cancer defects, Alzheimer's disease, blood clots, myocarditis, heart attacks, all these things, including diabetes, right? It's all our body cells going corruption, curse, and collusion for the same reason. And that's what's extraordinary.
And a lot of it happens because of unresolved trauma in the body, especially if some stuff's happened as a child,
Yes.
something traumatic. That energy is stored in the body, and then the body is it's telling you that something's wrong. So it starts creating these physical ailments to tell you need to figure stuff out. Otherwise, you're just going to continue getting worse.
That's right. That's right. You got to let go of things. And just deal with it head on, but not carry it. Look, there's an old saying that everything's in our subconscious mind. It's buried in there somewhere. Even if we forget about it, it's in there, right? And we've got to understand that we have the tools like a computer. It's a mathematical computer up here. So we store memory, but we can't remember it. But we've got to learn to understand that when we do store it, it also affects our biological genes because it is in there. And that's why we don't understand that. We've got to learn to deal with it and reject it and put it in the bin, like a computer. Put it in the bin and reject it, right? And restore and use different memories in our own progenitor genes, because every single one of us is coded with all the DNA evidence, right, that goes back for 1.4 billion ancestors. So 1.4 million ancestors are embedded in our DNA. And our DNA goes back 13.8 billion years. Just 1 centimeter of our DNA holds 13.8 billion years of data because we created from mud. And we have all the molecules like, I think we got something like all the molecules to fight germs and bacteria, more than 1 trillion different types. And it's amazing our biological genes, what we can fight and what we've gone through with those molecules that we do create today, because it's like we've been through 15 nuclear wars and immune to them type thing, you know what I mean? And it's kind of amazing because the way that our system's really set up is we're immune to many things that we don't even understand, right? That doesn't even affect us. But once upon a time, that was like a nuclear war bomb going off inside us, you know. And it's amazing that our body's so resilient that can create these things. But the things are altering today. We're losing the power because we're in the wrong mindset, and that's the key factor, right? We designed in a slave operation, right, basically in a slave society, so we conform and comply. And by not using our right mindset, we're in a prison system where we keep ourselves in prison, become our warden as well, and we don't even believe in that. But you know, that's the way we think all the time. And when we don't think outside the mind, we don't even understand that. And it's only when you think outside the mind that you realize that you are controlling a multiple system, in a sense that you depend on everything. You always want answers and more answers, and you're always afraid, and you're always controlled by that fear without even realizing it. And we all think we're not, but we are to one degree or another. And some are controlled more than others, but it also limits you to use your maximum capacity. And that's why everything negative in this world that you hang on to, or anything dwelling in your past, becomes part of your problem and affects your genes all the way and all the time. You've got to learn, no matter what it is, right, deal with it. You've got to deal with it, right? And you've got to learn to forgive and forget. It's an important tool. If you can't learn to forgive, you're the one that's going to damage from it. You have to learn to be the better man no matter what. You have to learn, look, it's like when you come from amnesia, the first thing you discover is like sticking your head out the cave, your head out the light. You know, we're all heading down the light at the end of the tunnel type thing. When you finally stick your head out there, you realize it's the beginning, not the end. And you look back in and realize, my God, I was wrong about everything, more or less. You know what I mean? Because you are. You're completely oblivious. And you realize that everybody else in the world just doesn't know any better. And when you understand that concept, you understand no matter who people are, where they come from, yes, there's a handful of real evil scumbags in this world. There's no doubt about that. But practically every other person in the world is confused. They don't know any better. And they don't want to know any better neither. Most of them are afraid or live in their own little truth, or can't handle the truth, can't face it, or don't care. Whether it doesn't matter what it is. But the reality is we have a big problem facing the truth. And everybody really does. They don't like dealing with their own truth. Right now, people are doing a lot of judgmental behaviors. You know, everyone's judging one another. But are they really taking a good look inside themselves? Because I don't think a lot of people really are, right? And if they really take a good look and realize how much they got to gain here rather than how much they got to lose, because people in the world today, they're always chasing their desires every day and worried about what they lose. That's all they worry about. Oh, I want this and I want that, and I'm worried about losing that. You know what I mean? Like, it's our whole life just a revolving door, and we've got to learn to do it differently, man. It's just not how things work. I mean, it just doesn't work. The system doesn't work. The way that we've been inverted so much doesn't work anymore. And that's what the top rollers are saying in the whole world. It doesn't work, right? We're stripping our biologicals apart into extinction. And now, you know, everybody in every platform is trying to help people repair their DNA. And, you know, a lot of these molecules we're talking about, right, as we were talking about before, is sold in Unifed. Japanese use it big time. They use molecules to conduct with their sixth sense. And they have different methods to try and repair your DNA with and your genes. And they're starting to use a lot of the old remedies and the old methods that some of the villages that are been using for many years that are off the grid. And, you know, there's some doctors coming out right now using some of those remedies, because these are the people that have to be 150, 60 years old. So they have the most and best remedies to live that old. You know what I mean? They're the most calm. They're the most spiritual. They're the ones that use those most positive feels in the most positive aspect in life. They're the ones that are off the grid, completely off the grid, that uses those abilities and never, ever, ever manipulate or twist the fabric of truth, because we all twist the fabric of truth so much from generation to generation, and we normalise what's moral today, and we strip them our moral. And when we strip from this, we're not conducting the most positive energy because we need them. That's why our moral values is the most important tools of righteousness. And when we have the right tools in the right place, that is our principality. And when we have that in the right place, we have the God-given power we come into this world with. That's why it's always been about principality and power, not flesh and blood. And we're warned about people also having an outside influence in their reality. And we're told in the Bible, be careful, because the voice in your skull, in your mind, is an outside influence in your reality. And it tells you very clearly the principality and the power in the air. Be careful, it'll deceive you. And we understand that biologically today. We have an answer for these things, and all these things match up.
Nicole has got a question here. How much is graphene oxide responsible for keeping the human in a carbon-based form, despite the ascension codes that are chemically changing the body to a crystalline base?
Look, these kind of scientific theories and conclusion from scientists, it's not where the evidence is, right? It's not, okay? This is where people are so mixed up with these things when they follow the scientists, they follow the atheists, and they come to the conclusion with reason with all this design. It's always been back to front. When you can get a person, right, let me tell you something. Meth is 1/3 graphene oxide. That's the purest form of crystal iodine. That's the purest form of graphene oxide you can get. Now, I can sit down and watch a person take 7 grams of this in a day pure. I can tell you now, he can take 10 times more than what's in those vaccinations. I can tell you that, right? And when they take this, they get pumped to the maximum and go into their primal state. So when you use all the BS that's being told all over the world, I want you to consider where's the BS coming from and who's so nervous about it and don't understand that we've been using this biological genes from the day we come into this world. It's a conductor we conduct with. And I don't get into these arguments about this because I've worked firsthand with this for 40 years with the top scientists in the world. And believe me, there's too much BS in this world. Too much BS. And so much BS, people's got no idea. When you take meth, it's 1/3 iodine crystal. It's the most purest form. It's a conductor. And you conduct with your natural organic state. And people use a different perception of meth. Look, your brassicas has got it in. Every drug in the world has got some kind of graphene oxide in it to conduct with. That's why it's opening up the third eye. You know, we could open up. When you smoke weed or you take your brassicas like they get the Brazilian kids in the Amazons from 12 years old onwards, let me tell you something. Either you go into a mindset where you feel like you're in heaven because you're going to a time where time stands still, life is everything is perfect. And it's awesome. You know, often a person takes drug, even heroin, and they sit back and say, well, mate, I feel like I'm in heaven. Hey, come on, guys, we're going out. No, mate, I'll be right. See you later. You know what I mean? You just feel like completely outside your mind because you feel fantastic. No pain, stress, and fear, right? But how often do you see someone take drugs and get paranoid? Oh, there's someone out there who's chasing me. There's someone out there chasing me, man. There's someone out there chasing me all day. You know, paranoia sits in. You can find that with practically any drug except for meth. Meth made laboratory correct. You never get paranoid on until you've been up a few days too long, right? Because then you get sleep deprivation. And that's always going to create paranoia.
I've seen people on 4 days, 5 days, and they're just like, whoa, like you just like they're somewhere else, always looking, seeing things that may or may not be there. Like that's really trippy when you see someone, then they're like, yeah, I haven't slept in 4 days. Well, maybe you should go to sleep, bud. But, you know, they just want to keep going for some reason.
I've known guys up to 20 days straight just keep going, man. It's just insane. You just got to keep your liquid up. The important part is keeping your liquid up. When you do meth, right, people barely eat, right? But keep your water up and you'll conduct all the time and you won't run into a glitch. You don't have psychosis, right? And you don't have sleep deprivation to keep your liquids right up. None at all. That's the secret. But everybody knows everything about meth. Any scientist will tell you. I mean, Hitler and all those guys, when they went to the army, when they were doing meth in the armies, they made sure they had plenty of water to conduct with. Water's the key factor. Keep drinking water so you keep your power up. And that's the thing about meth. When people run around 24/7, they don't get enough liquid in there. They start to dehydrate. And, you know, you've seen people on meth when they take too much meth all the time, they shrivel up. They literally shrivel up because they're not taking enough water. They need to keep water because otherwise they slip up and look like a prune after 20.
is meth the one where they get the scabs, like they get these things and they're constantly picking at themselves, so you can see they
And,
got scabs all over their face and arms and stuff?
and most of that's actually caused by dehydration, believe it or not. It's being insufficient on iron, right, and all the conduction that causes all that rashes. And that's what goes wrong with them, right? All those rashes is the molecules coming out of the skin that's dying. It's literally their body cells, right? And they go dry, and they dries up the skin and start getting scabs, like mites crawling out, right? But what is this? Your body cells just dying, that's dying, going completely flat. When you don't keep your water up, right? I mean, people knows how to use it in moderation correctly. I mean, always remember moderation, right? And it's not, I don't recommend using it at all, but it does prove that your heart, right, in dormancy. It does prove you're not human. It does prove your primal state. And when you use meth, right, correctly, man, you feel alive. Anyone will tell you that you're bouncing off the walls and feeling fantastic. No more psychological problem. Come on, let's go, mate. Let's go and watch the car. Let's go and do that. Let's go do that. Come on, man. You know what I mean? Like they're alive, they're alert, and they're fully activated. And so is a child from 0 to 7, for God's sake, when they create the molecules naturally. That's what people don't understand.
Does it make holes in the brain?
I've never noticed that.
Someone said here, like if you're taking aspartame or some of these things, they make holes in the brain, right? Like this is some of these fake sugars and things, but would meth maybe do the same thing? Because that's what they've told people to make them afraid of it.
Listen, I can tell you one thing right now, okay? First of all, you're talking about a drug they use on newborn babies. You're talking about a drug they're giving 5-year-old kids for medication. It's never done any such thing. But what people put in the street drugs, it's a different ball game. There are more than 500 different types of amphetamine and methamphetamine, right? Laboratory made differently, right? Because they have different conduction, different pH level to bring uppers and downers. You know the old story of an up and downers, right? Well, it's always meth that's up and downers. It's AD medication, right? Because children who are hyperactive got too much power, so they bring them down, right? And then children who's dormant and stupid, they bring them up. So it's the same medication with plus and minus in it. You always have ephedrine and meth with plus and minus because one is an upper, one is a downer. So one gives you power, one takes it away. It's a balance out. And meth can be made with many different enhancers. And when you start going to street drugs and what drug dealers do, and many other people do, even scientists have done it, right? Because they don't care. They will put other products in there that's not supposed to be in there. So when you talk about meth with other products in it and products like that, that's not supposed to be in meth to begin with. Do you know what I mean?
I know people that have done the uppers and the downers and their heart could not take it. Heart didn't know what to do because it's telling them to go up and the other part's telling it to go down. So it like confuses the body, and people have died that way by taking the uppers and the downers.
That's because of, in the sense of uppers and downers, it's not the meth itself that's uppers and downers. That's when people take meth and take heroin and take meth and cocaine. You get one that's an up and one that's a downer, right? And that's bad for your heart. That's terrible for your heart. Worst thing you can do for your heart. It'll explode your heart sooner or later, right? It's the worst thing you can do. But no, meth is a different aspect with an upper and a downer for people that are hyperactive or people that are too dormant type thing, you know. And it has a different effect with different pH levels. I mean,
but you're not advocating. But you're not advocating for people to take meth. You're advocating for people to attain these skills and powers on their own volition without having to take these drugs to get there.
When you go into ancient history and you start to study the things about certain meditations like Winoff, it recreates the molecules from adrenochrome that dies between 7 and 15. Look, everybody knows that satanic people want adrenochrome from children under 16, preferably under 6. Everybody knows that because the molecules are dead after that, right? If they're not under 16, they can't get nothing out. They preferably want people under 7 for that very reason, because that's where it's most activated with 2 molecules in mortality. So those molecules die. End of story. Meth, we know that meth, and discovered from meth, it was a magic potion they used from the days of Nimrod. We know why. People inverted can't create the 2 molecules of mortality. So they made meth with magic potions. Instead of using graphene oxide, they used to use graphene gold. That's what they conducted with back in the Pharaoh days, right? Was graphene oxide gold. It's used in magic potions with the power of Solomon and many other things in the early books. Nostradamus used the same magic potion. And many gnostic miners do, because it opens up the third eye for them to see into the future. That's what they use in the paperclip looking glass program. To go in the looking glass program to see in the future, the paperclip program they use for all these different drugs, and the most perfect drug to go into the looking glass program was meth, hydrochloride, what's called MBK, methylbenzylketone ketone. That's the one Hitler created. That's the most superhuman abilities that goes back into magic potions all the way from the days of Nimrod, from the days of Noah. So, the inverted people, why they want adrenochrome is because from the most positive people, they create two molecules of mortality. They can't create that. Only a person who's instinctive can. And that's those that has faith in their moral instincts, right? They can create two molecules of immortality, but the others can't. They can't use their instincts. They can't create those molecules. That's why they use magic potion with gold graphene to get those conductions, or take adrenochrome from a child to get that conduction, because they can't create the two molecules of immortality. We can, right? But only 1 out of every 8 people can. The others can't. End of story. No matter what they believe in.
What's your thoughts on ayahuasca and DMT?
Well, people using that a lot and being told to use it, but that opens up every entity and every influence. It's an known fact. You're opening up a lot of demon wills there, right? That's what you have to understand. It's about thinking instinctively. That's why you've got to understand Matrix, all right? You've got to understand what the military says in the Matrix. Those that think instinctively will tune out the program. You've got to understand Top Gun pilots, right? Even the latest movie that come out, right? Old Chief says to the pilot, think instinctively, follow your instincts. He says that in the latest movie. And that's what they always say in the movies, right? And do you think these people in Nebraska's, they'd be fucked in a wolf on that shit? I mean, look, hello, right? They get popped off in 10 seconds flat, man. So go ahead and take your drugs and go and be dormant and stupid, just like they are. Because basic common sense tells you otherwise. It's not going to adapt you into your natural primal state to think instinctively with your maximum capacity and positive power. It's just going to put you in la-la land. Oh, look at that. The colors are wonderful.
But some people that have some severe like anxiety or trauma, they can take some like mushrooms in a microdose or some things. They can take them out of that, state where they've got the built-in trauma. Like you can actually use some of these, plant medicines to, take yourself out of that fear, that inverted program and get people to start, living instinctually again.
Listen, this is what I often say. All the drugs happens up the third eye. I mean, you can take anyone and give them a party drug and they'll be happy. I mean, seriously, it's the truth, right? I mean, you can just about take any drug. I mean, a lot of people just smoke weed for that reason, right? Because it opens up that third eye and it taps you in with feelings. Like, hippies was always about weed, right? It was people smoking weed, getting high. But what were they? Love, peace, love, you know what I mean? That's what it was always about, the weed. But when you start bringing in hydroponics, it's starting to get a bit hectic with chemicals and molecules, right? Because hydroponics isn't naturally grown. And the hydroponics, right, they have basically what you consider as artificial intelligence in it, because it's artificial chemicals and it's artificially made to be a lot more potent. So you have a lot more psychosis involved. If you get naturally grown bushweed, old school stuff, right, it doesn't have that kind of side effect. The minute you start tampering around with modern technology and anything to add anything in, like all these new weeds that are out today, man, there's psychosis everywhere with this stuff. Well, that's the same with these natural drugs, right? The Aboriginals, not Australian Aboriginals, but a lot of Indigenous people has used them for 1,000 years. The peace pipe goes back thousands of years. We say it causes cancer. Today, they know that smoke doesn't cause cancer. They can't find any evidence. It's always pollution, right? The peace pipe's gone back for thousands of years. And, there's even a piece in the Bible where it tells you to use certain potions and certain potions you shouldn't use. Some of the seeds that tell you you get high on, man, they got strychnine in them, but it won't kill you, but it puts you on a trip. So some of the things listed in some of the oldest Bibles with things to eat and not to eat, there are things in there that help you so much, but they actually give you some of these psychedelic effects. Like there's even proven that one of the things that's told in there that's kind of permissible to use is weed, right? It's just an old ancient name, but it is in fact weed, and weed is in fact a herb. They call it a narcotic. That's BS, man. That's just because you get stoned, they can't make money on it. They're pissed off about it. You know what I mean? It's never been a narcotic.
We have actually a meth user here. He says, this is Greg Shondell. He lives in Mystic in the US. He feels he's a mystic, a Gnostic, a mystic. He says he's used meth for over 45 years and using it right now. I don't abuse it. I'm healthy as a horse. You don't know nothing about drugs.
That's right, exactly. Because look, I made videos about this. I've got friends that are 70 years old, right? Fit as a fiddle, right? Who's used meth in good moderation and kept an eye on what they're using as well. It helps if you're getting the right stuff, of course, and not getting some street bad stuff. But I get people on my platform where people, meth destroyed them. But it's the stuff they use and the way they used it out of moderation. But I've personally got friends that I know myself that's used it their whole life and are fit as a fiddle, right, and healthy than practically anybody else. And when they do damage themselves in any way, shape, or form, like breaking an arm or something, man, they heal like lightning when they're in the right mindset. And when they look after their biological system correctly and keep the fluids right and use it in that right moderation and also use the right products, you're going to have answers from people like this. Think about this. I know lawyers, top gun lawyers in the top field in the world and top cops that's been using this for 30 years. And there's some of the most intelligent people in the fittest state. They use it correctly and use it in the right moderation. And some of those effects that you see with those people is astounding. And he's right.
This here is Pam. She was the one that says the cold actually gives her hives, but she says she can raise her natural DMT through meditation. I'm to a point I can stop what I'm doing at pretty much any moment and trigger it when things get too rough around her.
Listen, I'll tell you something. When you use your gut feeling instinctive, you don't have to pray to create it. You can create, you can create opiates, very powerful opiates. When you get damaged and use your instincts, you can make the pain turn off in seconds and create the opiates to kill the pain, just like that. But you've got to have faith in it. So it goes beyond that, because when you're in a battle of war and you get chopped up, I got stabbed 27 times one day, right? 27 times. Didn't even know, man. Couldn't even feel it. Like I knew I got stabbed. It didn't even worry me until someone else freaked out about it. Because then when you're in that moment and you're full of adrenaline, you shut everything off. You can create any molecules that you need at that time in that motion, And, people who are on meth seems to be able to do that the most. That has been on meth and knows how to activate it. Because once you've got meth and you know the activation of meth, it's coded in your DNA because it's natural molecules. Meth is only a minor modulation drug. Right? It's only DNA technology. It goes in your DNA and it activates your natural abilities. So once it's coded in there with those feelings, your memory can bring it back. And by understanding how you can control your mind by thinking outside the mind, you can activate anything anytime you need it. It's just that trying to manage that system is difficult, because whenever you think about it, it oppresses it. And it's thinking outside the mind that makes you control this. That's why monks and Buddhists and Jilla masterminds and Bruce Lee never felt pain, because you can release those molecules to kill it like that. Switch off to pain. They're doing a lot of pain management in the world now because of that. You master your mind, you can manage pain. You can switch off to it.
Well, yeah, just the same as like when I was at the height of my hip problems and I was having pain, all I did was smoke a little bit of weed and the pain was gone. It's like whatever receptors it binded to, and then I'm dancing and it's like I don't even feel that pain. It's somehow it's connected to those receptors.
You just got to stop thinking about it. Like honestly, it's like sometimes you can be sitting at home not feeling too well, right? You might have a busted leg or something. Doesn't matter, but you're a little bit sore and you're sitting at home, right? And then all of a sudden you look up in the corner and you float away, right? And all of a sudden you don't feel jack shit. And then you sort of, oh, that's right, I've got a sore leg. You forgot you had a sore leg, right? It's your mind power, and it can be proven time and time again. Your mind gets floated somewhere else. You forget about it. It's like when people sense stress and anxiety and they're sitting at home, right? They don't want to go out. They just want to stay at home and hide under the blanket, right? Well, your voice in your mind tells you to do that. But if you go outside and you're stressed or you're having anxiety or you're depression, if you stick your face outside the door and walk into a crowd, you haven't got time to be embarrassed, right? So you're trying to pull yourself together like, I'm not stressed, And you change the atmosphere within minutes and you realize you're not that stressed after all. You just need a change of environment to get out of the environment, to get your head out of that bushes, really, right? And you can change your mindset without even realizing it. But, like someone's only going to come along when you're really depressed and just talk about the right subject that's got your attention. Oh, yeah. And all of a sudden you float away and forgot you were depressed, right? Just by having someone's attention in something they're interested in, oh yeah, just take their mind off it. And you know, how often have you been saw or heard of something, and you're sitting there and you saw and heard, and then someone just catches your attention, and you get sidetracked with a conversation, you forget about the pain in your leg, you know, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, it's there again. You're like, your mind's powerful.
Yeah, I've got the vice versa. So when I was in grade 7, I was riding my bicycle, and I'm riding and I'm riding, and someone called me, and I turned back and my handlebars like turn. I flipped over the bike, and then I like crashed. I picked up my bike. I saw these brand new Levi's 501 Reb tabs on. I had a little hole in the knee, and I looked, and I'm like, oh damn, my thing. And my buddy, he's like, what, face white as ghost? He's pointing at me, and I'm like, what? And I didn't even feel it. My fingernail ripped right out, and it was dangling from a little piece of skin, and I saw a little tube, but I didn't feel it until he told me, and he pointed at it. I looked at it, and then all of a sudden I freaked out and ran back to school. And now it was this complete like painful, which I didn't really feel. Like I felt like a little bit of throbbing, but it didn't feel much until I actually thought about what I was seeing, and then the pain went through the roof.
You know, I was riding an old XT 500 years and years ago. This is going back years ago. And, you know, a person's nightmare would be a sump plug falling out of a bike, right?
What?
And I was riding a sump plug. You know the sump plug?
No.
You know when you drain the oil out of a motorbike?
Yeah.
You got a sump plug.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know what that name was.
Okay. Well, the sump plug is when you drain the oil out, and it sits on the bottom of the motor. And I was running this TT 500 years and years ago. And I was going down the road 120, 30 kilometres an hour sort of thing in the out, sort of, you know, it's out in the bush a little bit, but bitumen roads. And I come up to this bend, and I went around the bend. And just before I come into the bend, I heard it go, and that's the valves, like running out of oil, right? And I just heard, right? And then I'm coming into the bend, and it went like fucking ice, man. Like, I mean, it just went like ice. And I wasn't going too fast. I'd gone around this bend a lot faster, but it just went right underneath me like it was on ice. So I slide in the road, and I got my hands, and I had gloves on. I had bike gloves on, but I'm trying to steady myself. I'm sort of down sideways, and I've got my hands at the back, and I'm sliding for about 100 meters, and there's a gully coming up, and I'm thinking, oh, God, I've got to not fall in this gully, you know. And I stopped safely, and the bike scraped all the way along and didn't fall in the gully neither. So just stay there. And the first reaction was, get up and get the bike, right? Get up and get the bike, you know what I mean? Oh, the poor bike, my poor bike. And I stand the bike up, and I stand it up, and I think, what the fuck happened here? You know, and I'm looking down, and I realized there's oil everywhere in the back tire, and the sump block fell out. So I remember hearing the crrr just before I come into the corner, you know. But here's something astonishing. After I pick up the bike and realize all this, right, then I start to look at myself, okay, what have I done? And then I looked at my hands. There was no flesh in my hands. The gloves were gone, and I was right down to bare meat on my hands. And I didn't even know until I looked at my hands. And as soon as I saw it, it was like, oh, you know, all of a sudden it started burning. But 2 seconds before, I couldn't feel jack shit.
Yeah, it's mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
No, exactly. That's why I always tell people, you know, like, don't, you know, sometimes you're better off to lie to someone because you don't hurt them, you know. What they don't know don't hurt. You know, what a person doesn't know doesn't hurt. And sometimes it's best not to tell them something so it doesn't hurt. Because, you know, like, let's just say you broke up with your girlfriend, for instance, right? And you're badly hurt about it. And then a week later, I'll see her with another guy, right? And the chances is you're probably not going to see her for another 3 months because I saw her somewhere else on the other side of the state. You know what I mean? And you know, I can either tell you so you can just be sore about it because you're hurting at the moment, or I could just keep it from you so that you don't hurt because you'll get over it. You know what I mean? Like a situation like that, it's often better to not tell someone than tell them because things hurt. And what they don't know don't hurt because it's over anyway. You know what I mean? And sometimes you're best off to not tell your mate if you love them and you care about them rather than getting them hurt, you know? Depends on the situation, of course. But you know
100%, because I find that it's just easier just to be honest about things so you can figure out and move on. But I guess there is situations where maybe you wouldn't want to share some information, but I think that's different than lying, you know, than just not, you know, divulging information.
It's called the white lie. You know, you often, you know, it's like the old saying. You know, it's not about what you do; it's about why you do it. Right? If you have to do something to get that person's attention, it doesn't matter how you get it, as long as you get it. If it takes something that you don't like doing to get them there, right, it's better in the long run that you do it, type thing, you know. But yeah, I mean, we don't tell lies to be mean and horrible, but sometimes it's better off to not tell them the truth, because it's better for them that you don't, you know, because what are you going to gain out of it? It's not about you, it's about them. And sometimes I don't believe it's right telling the truth or being honest about something, because it's not about your own priority and your own dignity. It's about them being heard. And that's the way sometimes you've got to weigh things up with. Sometimes it's better not to tell someone, to protect them, not to protect your egotistical problem and what you believe is right or wrong, because sometimes we're to shut our mouth, mind our own business. And it's the best way to play sometimes. Just mind your own business, because it helps somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've often taken a fall for something, not to hurt someone else. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I've always been that guy. Just blame it on Jesse. Just blame it on Jesse. And, then,
yeah,
I've had like lots of friends that blame their whatever they're doing with their girlfriends on me. So I have the girlfriends not liking me because they've used me as the excuse why they didn't come home, or they didn't do this, or they spent the money or whatever. Right. So I always had lots of girlfriends that were like mad at me, but for stuff I never did. But it was easier for them to blame me than to admit to them, to their girlfriends, or own
yeah.
up to their bullshit.
Sometimes we just take the bullet for someone, but we just take the bullet because it doesn't hurt you that much, but you're willing to do it so that it saves somebody else, But yeah, I know what you mean. You're the stool pigeon sometimes. You're the fall guy. Yep. Yeah,
So
so
we're coming up on 2 hours here.
yeah.
This was a great chat. Is there anything else that you wanted to maybe share with us here today before
Look,
we end it?
all I really would like to tell everyone to do is that this is the primary problem for everything in this world, right? And we have to go back to the moral state. And I suggest everybody follows Jeremy Griffiths, right, and on the World Transformation Movement. At least listen to what he has to say with the book Freedom. And for God's sake, do the Win or Be the program, the Coles House. Do the best you can with what you can, because it's going to help you so much. You have no idea. Believe me, everybody gets massive results out of this. And learning to think outside the mind and having more faith, you got to understand you can all gain from this. Whether you believe that or not, you have so much to gain. You've got no idea. Don't oppress yourself. Don't think for 1 minute that you're awake, because I can tell you right now, there are people around the world that's chosen for this moment, that's been here going through a special process for the last 45, 50 years, that's been designed for this moment. And a lot of us is going to tell a lot of people, we keep telling this to people, saying, you're just in the beginning of waking up. Trust me on that. You're only in the beginning. What's coming to us, right? Okay, it's going to be so extraordinary. It's mind-blowing. And that's why you've got so much to look forward to. And it's the best time to be alive, not the worst. But you can make it the worst or them confusing. It's your mindset that makes that decision. You can give consent to anything you want, right? Or you can give consent to the real primordial state, to think instinctively with your natural organic motor skills and go back to your primordial state. Repentance, go back, right? It's going back to your primordial state, because we're far more intelligent. And the oldest Bible in the world told us we were coming in this time. Now we have the evidence, not only to prove it biologically, but we can live to be 1,000 years. And it says in the oldest Bible in the world that's removed in our Bible, we're going to create superhuman abilities the way that we did 5,000 years ago. And that's our primordial state. And that's extraordinary. That's interesting. That's an exciting time. All right? It's an exciting time. It's a good
I'm very
time.
excited. Tell
Yeah.
us about your book, and we've got it going on the bottom here. Tell us what people can learn if they get your book.
Well, this is the testimony of Drug Reborn, and it goes through the whole process where I come from with the top scientists, with the meth program, and everything we went through with this, and about the human conditioning, and about how this activates. The first paragraph is about Hitler's plan. The very first paragraph you can see on Amazon Kindles, and you can see the very first paragraph says this is about Hitler's plan and opening up Pandora's box. That's what Harari, the architect for the fourth industrial revolution, tells you. We have the divine power, creation, destruction. That's what Klaus Schwab says, right? They got the sewing machine with the 10 officers at Geneva, with Sheba at the front to compound creation, destruction. So Harari tells you we're going to do what Hitler was trying to create. He's an historian who wrote a book that sold 12 million copies, and that's about the days of Noah and about Hitler's plan. And that's what he's saying, right? It's all mRNA technology, and they're going to create great gods, and that's hybrids with mRNA technology. And we have the divine power, creation, destruction. This book here is about everything designed for this with the military and what the military and NSA is all about. The biggest think tank in the world. They created meth from Hitler, right? And that's what the whole plan is, created by the military and NASA. And, you know, NSA is in Australia, the outback of Australia. Area 51 Australia is 56 floors in the building. They own every radio wave in the whole world from that one location. And right now they're watching every human being on Earth for a reason. And you know what it is? They're trying to see who's going to unlock their progenitor genes to discover who each person is. So that's what's happening all over the world. That's why they've got Ismail Perez and Jason Sherka talking about hybrids activating the pineal gland and using molecules through the ESC systems and Unifed, right, to activate people with their progenitor genes. And that they're even declaring that Zeus is resurrecting, and so is Enlil. They're talking about this shit. And, you know, they're introducing hybrids on the platforms as well. And that's what this is all about. The great gods are coming back. That's why Jonathan Kahn wrote a book, The Return of the Gods. Tom Thorne talks about this. We all talk about this. And that's what they're telling right in front of your face today. The gods are coming back, man. They're coming back through hybrids, right? And they're taking over people's bodies the same way that Harari is talking about. They're creating great gods.
We interviewed a guy who he believes he's Enlil, and he was, I guess, Eric Clapton, the musician's son from another, like one of his escapade son or whatever. He found out, and kind of a Native American, and you know, he's fascinating. We've had him, Michael Lee Hill, here a few times on the Missing Link. So yeah, it's interesting you say that, because people are, you know, resonating with that energy.
Yeah, it's interesting what people are coming up with, but let's see what they have to offer, because I think it's going to be a wild show.
Definitely a wild ride. Well, thanks again so much. How can people find you? How can people see more of you if people resonated with you?
Well,
you're doing live videos every day, right?
Yeah, Street Wisdom Bible page or the Witness page. I'm there every day.
Is that on YouTube as well as on Facebook, or are you just on Facebook?
Oh, well, right I'm in prison in YouTube again, you know. So I'm in prison for 2 weeks, but I'll be back there again.
So yesterday we did this a round table. We had like 10 people and people in the waiting room, and they said I needed to upgrade. So I upgraded to be able to go to stream to more platforms. So we're actually streaming to YouTube for the first time on the Missing Link right now in probably 6 or 7 months. I got a different page called the Forbidden History Chronicles. There's actually a couple people watching there live right now. We've got about 100 people watching live, you know, during this whole entire time. So, you know, you've definitely, you know, been, you know, in the ear of many people. So again, like Pod saying, great show, very interesting. A lot of people, you know, resonate. And today was, you know, great. You kept a perfect balance, and, you know, whatchamacallit, really appreciated your energy today. So some people commented how, you know, it seemed like you were actually a calm energy and you were able to deliver the message without without the energy going up and down too much like you have. So great job today, brother.
That's the way I do things. Sometimes I'm pretty calm and sometimes I'm full of fire, but you know, it's the way shit happens. I'm not in control of half my videos, man. Like, honestly, right? I'm not in control half the time when I come out here. It's just fire coming out my mouth, and it's like I'm being pushed up the backside. You know, I can't explain it, but it's like a force of energy is working with me, and sometimes I've got no control. The other day, you know, we talk about orbs of light and light. You know, the other day a video came out with lights everywhere. You know, it's flying around everywhere in the room here, right? But it's good to see when I make a video like that, so people can actually see what's happening when they're around me, because then people can see with their own two eyes. You know what I mean? And it makes you realize I do have lights around me. I do have these orbs of light around me, and they are ancestors protecting us. And believe me, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one, right? And we have a relationship with it. And when they come around, something comes out of my mouth. I made 2 videos. Who is the Antichrist, part 1 and 2? Go and watch part 2, man, and you'll see it for yourself. Because certain words come out in videos that I'm not in control of. I have to go back and look at the video and realize what I say. Like, I honestly, I sometimes think, what did I just say? because I don't even know what I'm saying sometimes. Well, that's a moment where these things happen automatically and I've got no control. And it's like, this is what needs to be said. And then it comes out and you can see those lights flying around me everywhere. You can see it yourself. It's just insane, but that's what happens. Now, a friend of mine is following me. His name's Tom. Tom made a quote on a video I made the other day about this. Now, Tom comes from Sweden. He came here the other day, and the lights were flying around the room while he's here, and he couldn't believe it. He said, "Fuck, this is real." And I said, "It's real." He said, "Man, I'm seeing them, you know, here, right here in my room here, because they do exist, man." And what do you say about these things? People think you're in lollipop land. They think you're still talking about fairies. Mate, I can't explain it, but it's how it is. And I'm not the only one. There's a few people like this that has the same orbs of light working with them all the time.
So you don't have to respond to this because we talked about this earlier, and Joseph's asked this a few times. So he's saying, can you ask Kim has talked about scientists on the missing H370 technology and had invented. Can you talk more about this? That was Boyd Anderson that came here. I'm not sure if you're confusing, Kim here with Boyd Anderson, because Kim said he doesn't talk about that. So he's not sure where you would have got the thinking that maybe that came from him. But I have had Boyd Anderson come here a couple times. He was because he scored the fast 5th goals in hockey history, and it had a certain number. He was brought in because the Illuminati's got numbers. They're all about numbers and symbols. They brought him in. They taught him all these things. He was involved with the Bitcoin thing before when they started, and he talked all about the Flight 370, about the stolen gold and all these kind of things, and the scientists. So I think maybe that's he may be confusing you with Boyd and
definitely. I don't know. I've never had any talk about that subject at all ever in my life.
Okay.
So I don't know anything about this flight and about what he's talking about at all.
Okay, awesome, brother. Well, you have an awesome day. Thank you so much.
You too,
and we look forward to bringing you again back here so we can have another good conversation in the future.
Yeah. Take care of everyone, and thanks, Jess. Well, I hope we'll talk again soon, mate. I hope we'll be back on again.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again.
Right.
Thanks everybody for all your likes, comments, hearts, shares, and stars. We appreciate all of your support. Thanks again. We've got, we might have one tomorrow. There's Laura Nina out of the UK. She's supposed to come and chat with us tomorrow. She's not feeling well. She's been hit by some kind of cold or flu or whatever it is. She said that, she might go live today, but, she can't really talk much. So we might have a day off tomorrow. So well-deserved with the big one we had last night, and we've had 2 today. I'm trying not to put 2 today, but again, thanks again, and we'll see you all next time. We've got another one for sure. We've got on Thursday. We've got the Galactic and Alien Day, all the people that feel that they're contacting with aliens, and we're going to do another round table like the Bible discussion yesterday, but it's going to be on, contactees, for aliens, galactics, and everyone that, has that type of connection into their noodle. So thanks again for everything, Kim, and we'll see you next week.